Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, February 19th, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triola,
Here?
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy is absent for the roll, but he's here. Commissioner Herman Robinson.
I'm here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise. My person is not here today. I'm sorry. For the invocation?
The invocation. Oh,
No, no one's here? Okay,
you are.
I'm here.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, we gather here today to talk about the business of the city. Please help us to be kind and respectful to one another. Please help us to remember that we are stronger together than we are apart. And please help us to always remember how much we're loved by you. Help us to make smart and sound decisions and bless this wonderful city of Lake Worth. Amen. Amen. Commissioner Robinson?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions, deletions, or reordering?
Not that I've heard, Madam Mayor.
Then we shall move on to our presentations. The first item is a proclamation commemorating John Faust
I object.
for his leadership in the Neighborhood Association by Herman Robinson. Are you going to read it, or am I going to read it?
Oh, it's an offering from us all.
Okay, thank you. I'm coming down there for this one. All right.
I did fill out a blue card.
I heard you're buying rounds after this.
Melissa. Again, I'm sorry.
And dinner.
One steak. You didn't 27 forks.
There you go. Whereas the city of Lake Worth is always grateful for the contributions of our residents, which make the city of Lake Worth unique in its own way. And whereas city of Lake Worth resident John Faust was born in Miami, grew up in West Palm Beach, and decided to move to the beautiful city of Lake Worth around 2010 and has never looked back. And whereas from the time he became a Lake Worthian, his contagious enthusiasm has been inspiring to all. He has been an active participant in the Downtown Jewel Neighborhood Association, where he served as president for 5 years, to later serve on as the president of the Neighborhood Association President's Council for another 5 years. And whereas City of Lake Worth resident and friend John Faust has earned a special place in the family of the City of Lake Worth by volunteering his time, his efforts, and his treasures at almost every event in the City of Lake Worth. And whereas the City of Lake Worth is thankful for his active role in important events and committees, such as the annual Flolfing Tournament that we all look so much forward to, Mango Fest, as well as his active participation in the Cultural Plaza Committee and his shameful self-promotion as Master of Ceremonies. And whereas John Faust is given a special mention as being Captain Morgan's first mate and the illegitimate brother of Flalfy with a slightly smaller head. Now, therefore, I, Pam Triola, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby recognize John Faust as a friend of the City of Lake Worth.
Speech.
Yes, just for 10 seconds.
A few words.
Need to thank the Academy, my manager, my agents. Actually, I need to thank past presidents, Mary before me and Ryan before her, and Herman way before them. Thank you, and other like everyone in this room, everyone watching on TV. my partner Yana that excused me. Well, figure
Quiet
speech.
in
They'll
the
be watching
chambers.
tomorrow. My partner Yana that forgave me for not showing up at home on certain chore days or at work. And in the short version of this is easy because we have a really great city. It's like it is. I tell this story. I'm sure everyone's heard me say this 20 times each, but where I lived before, west of here, I lived there for 20 years, and after 20 years, I knew 5 of my neighbors. And the first year I lived here, there was 5 neighbors I didn't know. And to step up and help in this neighborhood, it's in this city of neighbors, it's easy because of our neighbors. And thank each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have to refer to him now as Sir John?
No,
He's been knighted. No?
we could do that.
Sir John.
Bring my sword out. Where's my sword? IW. Okay, here we go. All right, item 5B, internal auditor presentation, a 2018 year-end review and 2019 annual audit plan. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Technical difficulties.
Is this your first presentation?
This is, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes, indeed.
Maybe the start of many.
Why is it black?
And if we could bring the PowerPoint up.
Yeah, well,
They're
the
trying.
TV's just went black.
That's not good. Where's Alfonso? There you
Yeah. He's trying to help the computer that also went black.
There we go.
We figured we kind of fake you out a little bit on your first one.
Well, as you said, my name is Will Brown, and I am the internal auditor here for the City of Lake Worth. It's my pleasure to come before the City Commissioners and Mayor for a presentation I have entitled Looking Back, Moving Forward. Looking back on the year 2018 and moving forward into the year 2019. What I'm going to use as a basis for this presentation will be the 2018 annual report that has gone to each of you. Excerpts from that, it's sort of an internal auditor's state of internal controls for the city. So I'll be using that as well as the 2019 annual audit plan. I thought I'd put the context of tonight's presentation in the context of the internal audit mission. The mission of internal audit here in the City of Lake Worth is to assist the city in attaining its objectives, to audit city operations and contracts, and to provide an independent and objective source of information and advice to the Commission. Internal auditors like to think of providing these points of perspective: oversight, insight, and foresight. We are here to assist the city in achieving results. And we like to think of ourselves as trusted advisors for the Commission. That's the internal audit, the mission of internal audit. Talk a little bit about the assessment of internal controls. From the 2018 audit work that was performed, interviews and observations with in various departments, I have used my professional judgment to develop what I like to call a state of internal controls for the city. The assessment's based on the internal control results that I've documented during audit work in the year 2018, as well as looking at external sources like audit reports from the city's financial auditors, as well as the county's Office of Inspector General. Okay, let's look at some positive things related to state of internal controls. I'm very pleased to report to you this evening that the City Manager's Office has offered ongoing support for internal controls here in the city. Department directors have acknowledged the benefit of effective internal controls, and when I speak with department staff, they too endorse effective internal controls. Some examples of initiatives that the city has underway that are beneficial internal controls are as follows. The Human Resources Department has an initiative to audit dependents' insurance coverage to make sure no one is taking advantage of the city's insurance policy by fraudulent use of the dependent coverage. So that's an initiative that's underway. Whoa, backwards. Okay. A second example is the city's recognized the importance of incorporating SOC 2 reports as requirements in contracts that the city undertakes with vendors supplying or involving financial transactions with the city or personal identification information transactions with the city. So that's kind of analogous to vendors who perform work for the city on city premises. When we enter into a contract, we require certain insurance requirements. So SOC 2 report is analogous to that, but it has to deal with security and reliability of transactional information. And then the third example I have for us is in the Public Services Department. They've initiated or they've implemented the Survey 123 work order system. And this is a real-time system that gives management visibility of what work's taking place, when it's started, when it's completed, and it's a nice management control, and it gives a lot of real-time information to the Public Services Department. Now, in contrast to that positive slide, I have this second slide. While in some cases I've observed that internal controls were in place and functioning, there are other places where controls were either absent or just plain out ineffective in either preventing or detecting either staff errors or fraudulent activity. Now, the good news is I haven't uncovered or found any fraud here in the city, but there was the ability for fraud to take place and be concealed. Two examples here. You can see there was audit work conducted in the electric utility department, in the warehousing and inventory area, as well as in the finance department in the accounts payable area, where I found some deficiencies in internal controls, primarily a lack of policy and procedures of controls monitoring or segregation of duty conflicts. Now, the good news is that department management have kind of fully owned these deficiencies and have taken already many steps to correct them. So that's very positive in that regard. This next slide, I just want to give you an indication of some of the external sources that I look at in looking at risk in particular. This happens to be the 2018 report to the nations, published by a group, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Now, on the left side of the slide, you can see what's called a heat map. Now, as you move from left to right on that map, it's an indication of areas of higher risk the further you go to the right. I'll draw your attention to a couple of items on the heat map.
So what is this a map of?
It's of risk in general.
Of risk in general. This
Yes.
is not a map of anything. Okay.
Correct. This is what they surveyed, and they developed this map as an indication of where the higher risk areas were in any entity, any given entity.
I just didn't want anyone at home listening or when they see the visuals to think that it's an investigation of the city's
Correct.
operations. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Does not relate to City of Lake Worth. It relates to risk
Gotta
in
say it.
general. So the first thing I've circled here is check and payment tampering is sort of it's kind of in the middle of the heat map, so it's kind of a medium risk in general. And so we've kind of addressed this in the accounts payable audit. So I wanted to point that out, that was something that was taking place in that area. And as you move to the right, you get into some higher risk areas, and you can see billing and expense reimbursements are high risk areas. Billing, for example, would be the risk that a vendor bills the city and actually doesn't do the work, or the city doesn't verify that the work's been done. Okay, and then the last one that I have to circle and talk a little bit about is non-cash transactions. So that would be in areas such as inventory, non-cash. Perhaps you could lump in P cards with that as well. Purchasing cards, city purchasing cards. So on the right side of the slide, you see 89% of all fraud involves asset misappropriation. So that's one of the focuses that, as internal auditor, I always try to look at. The 2 bullet points there are some important controls to have in place. And if you think about inventory and purchasing, it kind of affects every department in the city. So it's really key to have inventory control, management, and accountability, as well as the second bullet point there, reconciliation of city purchases. So this is important focuses to prevent risk in the areas identified. So this next slide just kind of gives you an idea of what, as internal auditor, I take the city through on an annual basis. It's the citywide risk assessment process. The first thing that happens is identify the risk universe in totality. That flows, those risk items flow into a risk matrix, which is sort of a rating instrument. And each risk item is rated on its probability of occurrence, and if it occurs, the negative impact it would have on the city or the city achieving its objectives. So the cumulative summary of that risk rating exercise generates some highly rated risk areas. And those become risk priorities that flow onto the annual audit plan. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of step and flow of the citywide risk assessment process that happens every year.
Yeah, I think we're fine. Thanks.
Okay, so we go from risk universe to risk matrix and rating the various risks, and then that flows into an annual audit plan. So let's talk a little bit about the audits that are planned for 2019 as we move forward. New audits that are planned are Code Compliance Improvement Project. This project's currently underway and ongoing. On the heels of that, we'll look at the business license revenue collection to see if there are any missed opportunities in BTR revenue. And also plan for new audits in 2019 are citywide contracts, where we'll audit we'll select various contracts and see if the city is complying and if the vendor is complying with the stipulations and so forth that are found in those contracts. And then P cards, purchasing cards, audit how we use our folks that have been issued the responsibility of having a P card, if they have followed the procurement code and so forth.
Please continue.
Thank you. And then lastly, as I mentioned previously, we have some follow-up audits in electric utility, in the warehouse and inventory area, as well as accounts payable. This is where internal audit goes back into areas that have previously been audited and make sure, tests for whether the recommendations have truly been implemented by the department. And you know, that concludes the city commission presentation for this evening.
Thank you very much, William. I want to thank you for all the hard work. We've been receiving reports constantly. We've had updated meetings on a regular basis. William, you are extremely thorough, and I will tell you that I'm so happy that we have you within the organization. Not everybody knows this, but the internal auditor is a position that reports solely to the commission. This is not a hire through the city, answering to the city manager position. That's why in the initial part of the report, when he said that he was happy to report that he had good response from the city manager's office and good response from that, is because this is an independent position, just as the city attorney or the city manager. 3 of the only positions that report directly to the commission. So he's been able to really work within the organization with staff and offer some good solid recommendations for fine-tuning and policies and procedures and running them through some actual, I know in the electric utility, you actually went through some workshops and things like that too.
Sure.
To focus on it. I want to thank you for all the time, and I'm looking forward to having you reporting here on a regular
Oh,
basis.
thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else?
Commissioner Robertson?
Well, I just thank you. you're part of the team, but you're not on the field per se. And I want to thank the departments for cooperating as they do. So it means we're all part of the team. And it's important that we increase efficiency, and you always do better when you know that somebody else is watching. And thank you for watching, to make Lake Worth better.
Thank you, Commissioner.
City Manager?
I'd just like to add, in my time in working with Will, he's been incredibly professional and very respected by myself and the staff. As you said, Mayor, we're kind of like brothers working for the parents, and our relationship has been very open and trusting. I know that my staff, my instructions to them are, when we're talking about things to come up for you to look into, Lake Worth is still in a process of creating a professional, well-run organization. It's been a large cultural shift here as we've implemented processes and technology, and we know that there's still things that need to be fixed, and we're happy to have him get in there and make recommendations. And that's the other thing. He doesn't just identify a problem. He helps to actually come up with solutions to implement to make things better, and we're grateful for that. So I just want to compliment his professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And also to thank my fellow commissioners too, because we can't talk about things together, but he individually meets with us to get our direction on things and the things that are of concern to us, and creates basically a task list of things to come up, and probably I would assume the things that come up most often are the higher priority, and then other things get added on and tacked onto that list. But
Absolutely.
we've been creating this great bond and this great friendship, so I'm grateful, and thank you to my fellow commissioners for all your input in these tasks.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay. All right, commission liaison reports and comments. Commissioner Hardy, you want to start?
Sure. I think we've all been rather busy with various activities. I just wanted to read 3 sentences out of a book that I like a great deal. Politicians, especially local politicians, the new invoke phrase is smart growth, right? And I think any politician can justify saying almost anything by saying that XYZ is smart growth. So here's the actual smart growth manual written by the people who coined the term, and here's what they have to say about parking in downtowns. But in the end, it is the fate of every great urban environment to have a parking quote-unquote problem. The more walkable a place becomes, the more people want to drive to it from less lively places. An emergent tourist or day tripper problem is a symptom of success and should not be the catalyst of more parking. That closes my report.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to remind everybody that we have a very special weekend coming up here in 4 or 5 days, and I hope that you will all be out there participating in the annual Street Painting Festival. And I'll put a plug in. I guess the Taste of Lake Worth is going to happen Friday night, so if you haven't got your tickets yet, sorry. No, I believe there may be some tickets. There's a few tickets left. A few tickets left. So this is, I guess, our most iconic event, biggest event we have here in the city. And I personally am so thankful that it is here in Lake Worth. It draws 100,000 people each year to our community, and each year I hear people tell me that they've never been to Lake Worth before, and somehow they end up coming back and they buy property or they invest or whatever. So it's really a great event, and I want to thank those of you who are in the audience tonight for helping put it all together, and I look forward to seeing everybody over the weekend. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Robinson?
Really looking forward to this weekend. Thank you, Commissioner Maxwell. And the stores that are opening, the businesses that are coming to town is indicating that we are moving forward. The Bamboo Room and all this exciting stuff that's coming to Lake Worth is good. We have a parking issue that we're dealing with, not a parking problem, and that's a good thing. So that's my report.
Vice Mayor?
I think it's a good day when I can find parking. I'm good.
You're good? Just a couple things.
Use your bicycle.
Quiet in the chambers. I'm serious.
Really.
All right, let me see. Last week, I had the great fortune of traveling to Tallahassee in 24 hours. 7 hours up, went to sleep, 6 hours at the Capitol, hopped in the car and came right back. So, and in that time, I was fortunate enough to meet with as you know, we've got a $2.5 million ask for the feasibility study for our ocean current technology project that we are in an MOU with FAU. How's that for letters? To talk about our harnessing the power of the Gulf Stream and turning it into viable energy that we can purchase here in our electric utility. Very exciting. And let me tell you something, we were received well. It was absolutely incredible. We met with the chairman of the House Energy Committee, Charlie Stone. We met with Representative Mike Caruso, who's sponsoring our ask in Tallahassee. Senator Berman. We met with the governor's office, the new governor, on the Office of Policy and Budget, and also met with the Florida Energy Office. Extremely open arms, well received, lots of great questions. Gabe from Florida Atlantic traveled with us, and he was the scientist in the room, and I translated everything he said for those who didn't understand it. Pretty much right,
That's
right?
pretty true.
Okay. In fact, there are 6 more appointments that I have to meet with before, but the one great thing that came out of that was we were asked to present at the
Innovation
at the-
Technology
at the Innovation and Technology
Committee.
committee meeting. So that will be in March. So I'll go back up for that. But in the meantime, I'm going back up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for 6 more appointments to talk about our asks. I know we're gonna be meeting with Senator Simpson. You might remember that name. He was the one who got us through for our Park of Commerce funding that we asked for last time. And he was integral in helping us with that road project. I'm trying to think of J.R. Williamson, is that representative?
Yeah, he's a chair of a committee.
Chair of the committee. I guess we're meeting with Chairman Stone's staff. We met with him last time. We're gonna meet with his staff and talk more about our projects in depth. And then the Senate staff of Innovation and Technology, that committee we'll be meeting with tomorrow and into Thursday. And I'm gonna go back, leave tomorrow morning at 6, go do some meetings, get up, a few meetings, and then come back again. So we should be able to make it in a couple of 24-hour trips. But I will keep you posted on that. So far, again, would you say, City Manager, it's been pretty incredible, the response?
Yeah, it's been very positive, and they're very fascinated by the concept and supportive.
And supportive. So more to talk about. Festival of the Trees, thank you for inviting me. That was a wonderful event. I saw a lot of people leaving with some fabulous trees. And I want to thank everyone for their kind words. Was chosen with some other women in our community in the Palm Beaches, from the Palm Beach County, Palm Beach Social Diary, something, to celebrate Galentine's Day. And it was an initiative for women to share with other women and to support other women throughout the county in their professional lives and careers, and to support one another to achieve great things. I had the honor of serving with some fine, upstanding ladies in our community in every different type of career and walk of life, and it was a terrific day. And Erica Whitfield from our school board was actually chosen as one of those women too. I was proud to be there with her. And she says, one of the comments was like, we owe it to our daughters to show them how to be a woman, how to be a good mom, to be a good leader, to be a good person. And that really is true. And it was a wonderful day. Lots more, but I will skip it because your eyes are getting glassy. Here we go on to public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Peggy Fisher, come on down, followed by Todd Townsend.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. I've been listening, if I haven't been here, I've been listening and reading, and some of the things that have been going on in the last 6 months have been sort of disappointing to me. And so I decided, as one of your bosses, that I would share with you some of my expectations of you all. So, I expect you to leave your personal politics at home. This is a nonpartisan commission. Make decisions based on what's best for Lake Worth. Not you, Lake Worth. Set policies for staff to follow, not the other way around. Conduct meetings by Robert's Rules of Order as specified in Rule 10 of Resolution 26-2017, which are your rules and procedures. Do not use a consent agenda to avoid discussion on issues. Be willing to openly discuss items of interest or importance to the residents of Lake Worth, who are your bosses. Be transparent in conducting the city's business. Be respectful of each other. I don't care if you like each other, but you all are commissioners and you should be respectful. And lastly, act like adults. So, with that was based on my observation from a number of months. Now on to another subject that's sort of near and dear to my heart since it's taken over 6 years of my life. The UAB board, the current original UAB board, has been in limbo for over 6 months, not knowing where we're going, what we're doing. And a number of us have asked questions with no answers. Well, in the next meeting, you're going to have an answer. You finally have an answer. And an ordinance, so there was some time devoted to this. Unfortunately, you didn't have the respect for the members that have served you for over 6 years. No notice of the agenda item on your next meeting was provided to the UAB members. I think that's pretty, excuse the expression, shitty. And a total lack of respect by both the commission and staff. You all don't know the amount of time that had been devoted on that board, and to have I don't care anymore about the board, but the respect that you should show to volunteers, no matter what board they are on, was not shown to any of these members. I just obviously am disappointed. I'm very disappointed in all of you because I know you all. And lastly, and I'm not going to finish until I say this, I don't think you should call it the UAV board. I think the appropriate name should be the capital M, capital E board.
Thank you. Todd Townsend. Quiet in the chambers, please. Todd Townsend.
Hi, Todd Townsend, 502 South J Street. Good to see everybody here tonight. I just have two quick little suggestions. The first one is having to do with the intersection at 10th and A Street. We had a situation recently where a company, the Dollar General, tried to come in and they wanted to put their building there. Thank God the commission, the planning commission didn't allow that, but other people are going to try to put stuff there. So we have to keep in mind that if some business or somebody puts something there, you can be very sure that there'll be a sign on 95 that says Dollar General or whatever that place of business is, 0.01 mile. So we shouldn't put anything there. We should use that place as like a sculpture garden or something that says, welcome to Lake Worth, welcome to the beginning of the tropics. Whatever's put there should have no parking or road significance whatsoever. We need that space for whatever we do at the beach. So that's one. My second suggestion is, of course, to the CRA.
You can direct
I feel like the CRA should actually back out of trying to, make their money downtown. That's for us to draw investors and new people into our town, not to have like the government own and run the downtown. So we don't like that idea. In fact, the CRA should actually redline themselves around the school. Yep, and spend some money on the school and around the school area there. So forget big business CRA, work on our little school area. Let's bring up the schools. That's what we really got to do. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager,
That was it.
Cards? Okay. So moving on to approval.
One more. There you go.
Ryan Oblander.
Ryan Oblander, 1702 North A Street. I just always wanted to make this comment, but I've never been able to because I keep forgetting. Public comment rules. There has been numerous usage of a loophole allowing gifting of time to a single individual for public comment. I would just like to know if that could be addressed to keep individual comments to individuals and not pooling them all into a giant pile. So fixing the loophole. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the minutes.
I haven't filled it out on the blue card, but may I make one more comment, please?
Well, I have to have a blue card. You can't make a comment without a blue card. Come on up, sir.
I'll fill it out afterwards. Oh, who is this gentleman in front of you, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Right behind you.
And there's a reason for that?
Yes, you missed the proclamation earlier.
I apologize.
We don't go back and forth for the section. This is your thumb. Thank you.
Sorry. My name's Michael Vivian. I'm at 2381 Sunset Avenue. And I was remiss in thanking whoever was responsible for making the, are they called lighted signboards that face this building towards Dixie, the two of them on the corners of this lot. I was amused about all of the announcements that happened in our history, or perhaps they were to be coming later in this year. And then last month, they were all accurate about the future, but I think that person is on vacation because I noticed that I missed things last month that are still being promoted by that board, and it makes me feel a little ashamed of my government for being remiss in making those announcements. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our public hearings. Ordinance 10A, number 2019-01. City Attorney, you do need to read the ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2019-01 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending the City of Lake Worth Comprehensive Plan by adopting a cultural master plan and a transfer of development rights program, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okay. We have any public comment cards?
No, ma'am.
Seeing there are none? Are
Is
there?
there
Commissioner
to be
Hardy?
discussion on this issue?
If you want to put your light on, yeah.
Sure.
Commissioner Hardy?
I just want to say that I respect the attempt. I think we recognize there are properties throughout the city that we would like to have increased development potential on. I think, however, that there is a simpler mechanism to this, and it's increasing the base densities, height, FAR, and the future land use plan in those land use categories. I think this is a very complex way to achieve a simpler objective. In addition to that, I object to, if we were to have a transfer of development rights program, I object to the idea that the city is the only person or the only entity that gets to sell their development rights. I would like to again reiterate that in other cities that have transfer development rights programs, the right to sell your development rights, it's not limited to just the local government. It's all property owners. Or they'll have a sending zone and a receiving zone. There'll be people who have properties that can only sell their development rights, and there'll be people who have properties where they can only buy development rights from other people based on what the city needs. This program seems to be at least as much about driving revenue generation for the city as it is a plan to allow development to happen in some places where we've found it difficult. And so again, I think this is not as simple a solution as there are solutions available. And I object philosophically to the idea that the government is the only entity that will have the ability to sell its development rights. And so for that reason, I will be voting no this evening.
Commissioner Robinson?
If we're going to transfer development rights, is there any way that we can restrict nonprofits from not participating?
For the record, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. Actually, the City Attorney, Christy Godot, and I had a little discussion about that earlier today. And I did propose and sent to the City Manager and Assistant City Manager a little bit of additional policy direction language for the ordinance in case this question came up. And what it entails basically is adding a provision that the TDR program is being established to not only deal with blighted and areas and redevelopment, but also to strengthen and build the city's tax base. And then we spoke about the fact that since you are the entity that's controlling the sale of the transfer development rights, you couldn't prevent nonprofits from participating, but you could require them to do what's called a pilot agreement, which is payment in lieu of taxes. We have one nonprofit that has chosen not to have its development classified as nonprofit. That's the Lord's Place. They pay the full spectrum of taxes, but they could go into an agreement with us where the payment in lieu of taxes means they are off a tax roll but agree to pay the city the ad valorem proportionate share they would be paying if they were actually a taxable property. So I could bring up that language if you'd like to see it. It's just like 8 words under one of the policies. We talked about it. It came up through an email earlier today, so I didn't have a chance to send it to all of you because I just finished writing it maybe 2.5 hours ago. So I can bring that up if you'd like and see where it's proposed to be changed.
So if we're voting on this tonight, we can amend it by including, and not,
I'll show
would
you.
that subject us to any legal consequences?
No, because it's a first reading.
First reading, but I mean, even if we do, is there some reason why, I mean, a lawyer can do anything, but is there a good basis for us to limit nonprofit
One thing
or
that we
pilot, excuse me, I don't, I need to change it to pilot instead of limiting the nonprofit use. I'm interested in taxes to the city.
Madam Mayor, while William's looking for that, if I can respond to
Please do
perhaps,
so, Christine, thank you.
answer the question. We can't prohibit nonprofits from utilizing the program, but what we can do, and we're going to research this a little further based on our conversation today, is create a sort of fee structure that's neutral to all entities. And what that would include, as William explained, is that if you're a for-profit entity, you would pay your normal property taxes based on those transferred rights. If you're a nonprofit, then you would pay the same taxes, but it would be under a pilot agreement. And so those pilot agreements recently were upheld in the state of Florida as a voluntary agreement that you can do with a nonprofit where they agree to pay taxes even though they're nonprofit status.
Follow up? Go ahead, Commissioner.
But if they don't voluntarily, you said they volunteer to pay pilot.
What we're looking at is making it a condition of this program. So if you want these rights, you have to pay the fee. And the fee is a calculation of what the city's going to charge plus the anticipated ad valorem taxes. If you're a nonprofit entity, then that would go under a separate pilot agreement.
which could be incorporated as part of the development agreement, because remember, with this program, you have to exhaust all of the development potential through a planned development process, which comes before you anyway, and most of those would have a development agreement, so it could be incorporated as one larger agreement for both the development as well as the pilot program. And why I couldn't figure it out is that it shows up red on my computer at the office, but the 6 words are right there, and to increase and strengthen the city's tax base.
It's red on these screens.
But
I just made it red.
that doesn't indicate pilot though.
Pilot is the way you would go about assessing the tax.
Well, don't we have to be specific if somebody's transferring or buying or selling?
Well, that would come up in the agreements you're talking about. Each project would be specific because we wouldn't really know how much that value would be until the development's actually proposed.
Madam Mayor, if I may add, this text amendment to the comp plan provides the umbrella to allow us to implement this in the LDRs and create a specific program. By William adding this language, this allows us to say everybody who participates in the program is going to help our tax base. So therefore, if you want to participate, you either have to pay the taxes or you have to enter a pilot agreement.
Okay, good.
Vice Mayor?
And I just wanted to comment because I had forgotten that the Lord's Place actually, years ago, the city manager and I went with William to the Lord's Place and asked if they would, so I want to publicly thank the Lord's Place for investing in the city and actually keeping it on the tax rolls, because we have done that with other nonprofits that have chosen to keep it off the tax rolls. And as the second on the motion, I have no problem with adding this in.
Okay. Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I just want to thank Commissioner Robinson for a good catch here. I didn't even think of that in the context of this this ordinance. So thank you, Commissioner Robinson, for that, and I'd like to see us go ahead and vote.
Well, the motion will have to be withdrawn and the second withdrawn and a new motion amended to reflect the change in the.
As the maker of the motion, I agree to amend the ordinance to include the 9 words currently highlighted in red.
And I've already said it.
And you've seconded.
I think there's 9 words.
Yes,
You
it's
do-
9.
9 words, okay. So to reflect the 9 words, and we do have a public comment card from Mary Toy. Welcome.
I'm Mary Toy, 1820 North K. This program has been, ever since I started hearing it at the last meeting, had puzzled me. So I spent some time today reviewing transfer development rights. I went through the Smart Growth America policy primers. I went back to other meetings that you guys had had. And I looked at like Lee County, I looked at West Palm Beach, I looked at other places in Florida around the country, and maybe you can answer this. Will the city designate sending and receiving properties or areas?
We won't go back and forth, but you can state your questions and when we're through, we'll discuss.
Because it looks like in every other program, cities say, okay, we're gonna protect mangroves, all right? Here's your property, half of it's in mangroves. So we're gonna say to you, you can't develop that because we wanna preserve those mangroves. So what we're gonna do is say, you can sell the development rights if you were able to do that mangrove development to that guy over there. So you can increase your property. And then this area, he can do it. This area where we want to increase development, where we think we can get more money, is going to be a receiving area. West Palm Beach has specific areas with all kinds, and I realize we're not West Palm yet anyway, all kinds of specific criteria set out as to who can sell and who can receive. Now, the issue also came up in my mind is if the city is going to be the only one selling their development rights, how will that negotiation go? Hi, I'm a developer. I'd like to develop that property over there, and I'd like it to be 20% increase. How much you gonna charge me for that? It's your property. How does that work?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other public comment cards? Did you want to answer that, City Manager?
I'll leave that to the pointy heads.
Okay.
Pointy heads, thank you. Look, I just joined SNL. Any event, the way that this is actually fairly simple. There will be a resolution brought forward at the second reading that will establish what rights are being put in the bank from city's properties. And as proposed, it's about 1 million or so potential square feet coming from the library, the City Hall Annex, the City Hall, a portion of 1900 Second Avenue North, and a couple of little properties. Those will be placed in a bank. It also will establish the value per square foot, which is being proposed as $10 a square foot. The receiving areas are essentially any place you can do a planned development. If it's east of Dixie Highway, per the language, you can only buy increased density. If you are west of Dixie Highway, you can buy increased density, height, and FAR, but only one additional story. And that's it.
Commissioner Hardy?
You know, the only thing I'll say is that Ms. Toy was very much correct. The impetus for this program seems to be very different from the impetus for every other TDR program that I can think of, and that it seems to be that we, the government, get to create a resource ex nihilo, out of nothing, that we get to monetize and sell to other people, and we decide the terms of all of that. And the entire point of this seems to be to increase the development capacity of certain properties, but rather than just upzoning the specific properties, we're creating this complex mechanism for doing that when there's another simpler option available. And I just want to say, you know, we have this history of doing things in a very strange way in this city, and we have a history of doing things in a not so standard way. This is so different from every other TDR program you can think of or read about in any way. I can't support, especially being that we, the government, are the only people that get to benefit from this program that we're creating. I think that's crazy, and we're setting the prices based on what sort of market? I again renew my objection. I'll be voting no.
Commissioner Robinson?
Can we do a sunset on this if we don't get any action in a year? I mean, because it's going to indicate to a developer that they're at the subject of political conversation, and that usually doesn't set well with developers. They would much rather say, I can do this, I can do that, and that's what they can do. Now we're asking a developer to come in and deal with us, and that sometimes can be squirrely. Let's consider this a pilot program in itself, and not to use pilot too much, but if we don't get any action within a year, to revisit it and see if we can do it some other way.
Is that a motion?
That's what I would like to see.
One at a
happen.
time, please.
There's one on the floor.
We have a motion already and a second on the floor.
May I move to amend the motion?
Is it your motion?
You can amend. You can offer an amendment to a motion.
An amendment to the initial motion?
Yes, you can do that.
You can offer an amendment, yeah, but it would
Okay.
have to be accepted by the person who made the motion.
Is that the way that it works, or can you just get a second?
No, you have a motion and a second on the floor already.
Okay. Well, if the person will accept, if the maker of the motion will accept this, I'll move to amend this so that it sunsets 3 years from now. 3 to 5 years. Is that?
Because we'll be doing another comprehensive plan review, and so probably beginning within 3 or 4 years to meet the 7-year cycle. So that would be a perfect time to reevaluate whether that's working or not.
I'm fine with that.
Is the maker of the motion okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
As the maker of the motion, Madam Mayor, we as the commission create ordinances, and we as a commission can remove an ordinance.
Correct.
So, putting any type of stipulation on this that we sunset it is kind of moot, because we can come back anytime in the future, and not limit ourselves to a time certain, and move the ordinance.
I'm always aware of that, but yet if it helps to get the matter through right now and to pass it, I'm more apt to put the sunset in there right now without any controversy, just because I'm tired of controversy.
Well, it seems to me, Madam Mayor, there's going to be controversy because we have at least one member of the commission that's already decided he's going to vote against this, no matter what. So, we only need 3 votes here. So
Understood, but I'd rather do it in a peaceful way.
Well, it'll be peaceful, and I've already asked earlier, peace.
I'll withdraw my motion. I think the argument that was made was not necessarily an argument made against sunsetting this ordinance, but an argument made against the very idea of sunsetting itself. But I will withdraw my motion, and I will renew my objection, and I will say that I'll be voting nay.
Commissioner Robinson?
Controversy is not a good word for discussion. And the idea of any term of sunset would possibly encourage activity sooner rather than later. If, again, it leaves it up to a political decision of this is not working. And developers don't like political development. I like the idea, but it's
I think that I'm sorry. Were you finished?
I'm done. I just when we talk about controversy in discussion, that's not a good way to start a discussion.
Well, I know I sit here a lot of times and I'm supposed to be right here in the middle, but sometimes I have feelings and thoughts on things too, and I usually keep them quiet and let everybody else have feelings and thoughts, but I was just speaking my mind, which I thought was a good thing, because it's all about conversation, isn't it? So I was comfortable with the idea of putting the sunset clause in there. I think that if it's more amenable to everybody to have it, I'm fine with it. Whichever way it is, I'm comfortable with it, knowing that we could always come back and do it, and it's not government and development. It's actually giving these people that are interested options in ways in which to enhance their projects. if you look at it from the other perspective, it's not about them having to bargain with government. It's about giving them other options to enhance their development projects that are more in tune or in kind with what we'd rather see here in Lake Worth, and that's a good thing. So either way, I'm in support of it, whether you would like motion maker to change it to sunset.
No.
Or, I'm asking if you would like to change it or keep it as is, whichever you prefer.
Madam Mayor, I'd prefer that we get a 5-0 vote on this, and if putting a 3-year sunset in there is gonna make people feel more comfortable, then I'll do it. But I'm not gonna get up here and be, arm wrestled only to get the same result.
You weren't arm wrestled, honestly, Vice Mayor Pro Tem, and I'm asking you this. Personally.
Then no, I don't want to amend the motion.
Okay. Got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next item, which is discussion, hold on a second, I'm sorry. Ordinance number 20,019-2. City Attorney, you must read the ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2019-02 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 19, Article 7, Sections 19-100 through 19-119 of the City Code of Ordinances, entitled Communications Facility in the Right of Way, updating the definitions and making other amendments to Chapter 19 to reflect recent changes in state law, providing for severability, the repeals of laws in conflict, codification, and an effective date.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Second. Any public comment cards?
No, ma'am.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business. Item 12A, discussion regarding commission and city manager relationship, requested by Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Robinson, did you want to lead the discussion?
I just want to express that this is not in any way an attack on our city manager. This is a step towards better communication, I think, I hope. And that the expectation of you getting direction has been lacking. I've heard too many times that I don't have a sense of direction. And I think it's up to us and our relationship with the city manager to do better at communicating our wishes for him to act. Good business uses evaluations as a means of making a better operation. I think it would do us both entities good if we had an evaluation and could set a date for a future evaluation and better our communication skills. If we could set a date tonight, then we could limit this conversation tonight to a date future.
Okay. Is there any date suggested? Vice Mayor?
I'm a little confused that we're asking for better communication, but then we're looking to review him. How does reviewing the city manager help with our communication to the city manager? I guess I have an answer.
Commissioner Hardy?
Well, the first thing I would like to ask before I answer the question is, when was the last time the city manager was reviewed?
A couple of years ago.
2 years ago?
2 years
Okay,
ago.
I get reviewed every year. Okay, I get reviewed every year. As a matter of fact, my first year as a teacher, I got reviewed twice in the year. And so I just think it's healthy from a communication standpoint. The review process is the process of communicating to the city manager what our expectations are for him in the future and how it is that we felt about his performance in the past. And that's really all that the review is. And so I think the review itself is the act of communication between the board and the city manager as to what we expect of him and how we feel that he's performed and areas for improvement and areas of strength. I see the review process as a communicative act. So I don't think this should happen as an election looms here in the city, frankly. But I do think it should happen shortly after the election is concluded. I think the board members at that time will have a sort of mandate, having just completed an election, and there'll be no questions as to what the purpose of that is, and whether or not we're all focused on the ball. So that's, I think sometime after the March 12th election would be a good time to have a review that's probably overdue.
Vice Mayor?
Madam Attorney, do you know that, is there a review clause in his?
I don't believe there's one in his
contract?
current contract. Mm-mm.
So there's no review clause. We've just been doing reviews occasionally, but there's nothing in the contract that says we are to do a review.
That's correct.
Can't hear. Sorry. I'm fine with the review process. I don't think we need to wait for after the elections. We can do it the next meeting. I don't care about it. He's up, what does it matter? What do we have to wait for a political election for? There's no mandate before, after, or whatever. If you're calling for a review now, then call for a review now. I think it's harder for newer commissioners to learn how to communicate with the city manager, because we had the opportunity to learn and go through that process before you did, so we've had more time to be able to learn how to communicate back and forth, I think. And I think it's just time that helps and makes it easier to understand and know the give and take and the communication back and forth. So I think for us, because we've been here a little bit longer, and I don't want to speak for you guys, I'm sorry to say that, but I think that when, you come in the first year, you're just learning everything, and then the second year, you're in it, and then you're putting your positions for it. So I think that I'm happy with the review. I always think there should be a review of your leaders, and I'm totally good with it. But I don't think we need to wait. If you want to do it, let's do it now.
Madam Mayor, I tend to agree with you. Let's just go ahead and do it. I think we can have it ready by the next meeting. And the city clerk has a very nice city manager review form that's been used in the past that we can use. It's all ready to go.
Yeah, if it's of concern, let's do it. Commissioner Robinson?
I appreciate it, because politics slows down a lot of the process that government does everywhere. And I think it's to our benefit to communicate our individual expectations, and it's open to all of us. And I don't want to be too flowery in my review, but anyhow, look forward to it. The political process shouldn't get in the way of moving us forward.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You have your direction?
Thank you.
About you? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 12B. There's no vote needed because there was a discussion. This is also a discussion regarding 10 million allocation of sales tax funds for Casino Park requested by Commissioner Robinson. You're on deck again.
Well, we have in excess of $14 million left in the fund. I would like try to get an understanding of the expectation of how we're going to spend that. I know the casino park is in need of expenditure. I know that roads are always going to need expenditure. I know that downtown parking is a desire of a lot of people. And if there's anything else, we should probably get it out there, and let's earmark some money for different projects and then move forward with that amount of money earmarked for those projects. And so that we don't continue to dip into the cookie jar and look back and wish we had done something else. We need to make some hard decisions on this money. It's burning a hole in my pocket.
It's not your money.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'd
Right
like
in the chambers,
to
please.
weigh in real quick on this. I had asked the city manager to put together some sort of a little report on the previous conversations we've had on the penny sales tax, and also a recollection, if you will, of each of our priorities that have been presented over the period of time. I just want to remind everybody that we had our consultants come in back in August of last year and gave us some ideas on what we could be doing up there at the beach. So I find it a little troubling that we're going to have this conversation 3 weeks before the election. Okay, I think, first of all, to have a conversation about spending $10 million on the beach, which I believe is the request that Commissioner Robinson had at the very end of the last meeting, is absurd, irresponsible, and considering we only spent $6 million, supposedly, on rebuilding that building, and the $5 million we spent from the county, plus the other couple of $1 million we threw in there for other goodies. And that project didn't work out real well for us financially. So, I think that talking about a $10 million allocation of money for the beach complex right now, 3 weeks for the election, is just totally, as far as I'm concerned, off the table. I'd like to end the conversation right now.
Commissioner Hardy?
Some interesting things in this report. I'm going to look at page, I don't know if these pages are numbered. Could you go forward from that slide? Yes, that was over a year ago. And what I see number one for 3 out of the 5 commissioners is neighborhood roads. For Madam Mayor, that was your number one. Commissioner Maxwell, that was your number one. And that was also my number one. Could you go forward 2 more, 1, 2, 3, 4 more slides, 5 maybe? Yes, February 7th. That was less than a month. That was, gosh, like 2 weeks ago. Again, number one for 3 commissioners, neighborhood roads, Madam Mayor Triola, Commissioner Maxwell, neighborhood roads, Commissioner Hardy, neighborhood roads. Could you, from that slide, I just want to make sure that we're going forwards or backwards here so I can find it. There's a nice little, here you go. Go back 2 slides, please. 3 slides. Yes, there you go. Dollars spent on improving neighborhood roads, 0. Investment in the Park of Commerce, 2.9. That was on several of our lists. That positive. Address parking in downtown, $2.4 million spent. Go back another slide. Where's downtown parking garage on that? It's number 3 for 3 of the commissioners. It's number 2 for 1 commissioner. It's number 1 for another commissioner. There's no way to say that based on our stated objectives that was a priority. Can you go to the other slide based on last week or 2 weeks ago's? Wow, downtown parking garage is number 1 for 1 commissioner, number 3 for Madam Mayor, number 2 for another commissioner. We've been given a lot of opportunities to spend this money from staff to solve a parking problem that the commission has not communicated to staff is the primary goal for spending this money. I find that interesting. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to earmark $4 million for neighborhood roads. And I'm up for discussion for the pool. I think the pool and the casino, that includes the redesign of the loading area, that includes the second floor, that includes the area in front of the casino, that includes parking situations there, and that includes also obviously the pool. I think that's important as well. I'm interested in earmarking money for that today as well. I just do not like the way in which we have spent this money in dribs and drabs that hasn't really been at all in accordance with our stated preferences. And we've been presented with opportunity after opportunity from staff to spend this money in certain ways that has not accorded with our stated preferences on now 2 workshops.
Vice Mayor?
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I remember somewhat of the conversation when we talked about roads. Roads were higher in priority, but there was also the conversation that said we may come in under budget. We don't know what that's going to be. Let's finish the 4-year process and then figure out coming back. So to push to spend this money on the other issues, the Park of Commerce issue came up where we got a grant and it was a matching grant, so we needed to move forward. The parking issues downtown, these properties came available. It was something that needed to move forward. From what I understand, the city manager and staff actually talked to the other electeds about doing that, so it wasn't something that was done without everyone knowing about. I think I hit the points at the moment.
Mr. Robinson?
Well, thank you for mentioning the political process. This has been needed to be done for a long time. And granted, all the spends that we've done up to now have been good. Park of Commerce was fantastic. Roads are never going to be done. Roads are always going to be in the city budget. Roads are hopefully going to have another $5 million improvement based on the bond issue. That's a decision that we'll have to make later on. The underperforming asset on our ocean front is something that nobody wants to really make a decision on, because it's a park and it's an expense and it's not going to make money, and so we've got a derelict empty pool. We've got storage space of 5,000 square feet of oceanfront property. We've got a bathhouse that's not very inviting, to say the least. And we need to make a decision on it. The parking, all right, so if Commissioner Hardy is talking about $4 million for roads, is there any feeling for additional money to the Park of Commerce? Is there any feeling for spending any more money on the parking issue downtown? If not, then I think we should at least make a commitment of some serious amount of money to make some improvements on our casino park. That's all I'm asking, is for to give the manager and some direction on not necessarily how we're going to spend it, but how much that we're going to stop spending it. Because if it's there, we're going to come up with different ways to spend it, I'm sure. The longer we go, the longer we don't make a decision, the more options we're going to have to confuse the basic issues that we have, which is our casino park, roads, and parking.
As for roads has been always priority. You know, it's been my baby back to the initial talks about the road programs. Our roads were a wreck, and we had to do something about it, and it took us a long time, but I'm grateful to everyone in the community for standing up and realizing that we had a problem and that we needed to fix them. So I changed some of my direction a little bit in regards to that because of the fact that we were ahead of schedule and under budget, something that you usually never hear in government. So I thought wait it out to see. The only thing that I would say, and this would be a matter for discussion, and this is just something I'm going to say, is that I still worry, and you've heard me say this probably 27 times, but I'm going to say it again. I still worry that our maintenance budget is not padded sufficiently for upkeep in the future. We don't budget a lot of money into that maintenance. That maintenance budget has always been a small amount of money, $100,000, $200,000, Jamie, or something to that effect. we have to start thinking, we have made this huge investment, yes, in most of the roads, but not all of the roads. And we still have to make sure that we can take care of these new roads with the proper maintenance budget. So I would change it from any type of aesthetic or other types of road projects, but I would say, please, let's not let another budget cycle go by without looking at putting more money, whether it's from the penny sales tax or from something else. We need to shore up that, just like we shore up our self-insurance funds and everything else. We need to shore up our maintenance budget because it's not realistic, and I will say that till the end of time. Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm looking at these two graphics from July of 17 and just, I guess, a week or two ago. And I just want to comment that, first of all, we recognize that these two priorities lists, if you are, individual priority lists that we have expressed, are a year and a half apart, okay? And during that year and a half, some things have come up. Natural disasters, if you want to call the grant windfall, or whatever you want to call it. But I look at my priorities or whatever, and my number 2 priority a year and a half ago was the Park of Commerce, but we got that grant money, so it drops further down on my list. And my other priority has moved up, which happened to be in July of 17. My third priority was downtown parking, so that's moved into the second slot. Okay, and we had a hurricane. Okay, as you all remember, we had a little bit of a blackout, or we were out without power for a while. We learned a little bit more, as we always do. We're always learning more and more about our utility system. So the issue of a second tie line has come to be a real topic of discussion. So for me, a year and a half later, 2 weeks ago, that tie line moves way up on my list now, because we have some more history, we have more experiences, we have more things that are happening. So all I'm trying to say here is I'm a little uncomfortable that we're going to try 3 weeks before the election to try to figure out how to divvy up this sales tax money when we have obviously been addressing this on an ongoing basis as conditions have presented themselves. Now, some of the comments we've heard in the past were, well, gee, we didn't have a plan for this sales tax money, and other communities had plans for their sales tax money. And again, we were in actually a very fortunate situation that we were already clearly focused on funding, with some mechanism, a roads program. And then the half-penny sales tax came along. So we were already focused on what our biggest need was in the community. So the half-penny sales tax, in my mind, was almost like a gift, if you will. And I think it's a perfect marriage, if you will, to what we were doing with the bond money and the new roads. So to suggest that we've been irresponsible, and this is my word, I'm not necessarily asserting that anybody's used that word, but to suggest that we've been irresponsible, we've not looked at how we're going to spend this money, I think it is not an accurate statement, because we've addressed it consistently since that money was passed. And the item that we have before us tonight is to talk about $10 million for the beach, not to have a full-blown conversation about how we're going to prioritize and allocate money from the half-penny sales tax. And for that reason, I think we should move on.
I think actually that you're right, we are moving across. How many workshops are we going to have on spending the penny sales tax before we actually make a decision? Are we going to be a reactionary commission that sits here, and as things come and happen, we're going to say, okay, that's penny sales tax worthy or not? Are we going to plan and try to be proactive about it and plan to put in places, and then all of a sudden something comes our way, gets us in trouble, and then we have no money to spend on it because we've spent it in other places? I guess that's the choice. That's really the choice we have to make as a commission, to say, plan it out or have it to do the things that come our way. We're just finally stepping out into our own, and we're having opportunities that we've never had before. Again, I know in reference to the beach, I know that I want to have, in fact, city manager, what did I ask you today for? To make an appointment with me. I wanted to.
For the county.
With the county. We mentioned that last time about talking about our beach projects. So make an appointment with the county. Also, do you allocate money to a project? Now, you'd all know I'm beach, pool. I've talked about this a million times, but you can't allocate money without a plan of some kind. We better bring back those plans that we had before and start, let's bring that pool plan back that we had when they gave us 62 different options, and actually put viable things together to see what's realistic. We had a great presentation last meeting in reference to it, to see what that is, and let's talk with the county too. They're our partners, right? They pay for a bunch of stuff so they can have parking for the county. So our parks need upkeep. We need to have a conversation about that. We need to talk about the pool. Pool's part of that park too, isn't it? It's not a part of the municipal complex, it's a part of the park. So we've got some conversations to be had before I can define a number in financial allocation, but I'm all for some financial allocation to that pool, Commissioner Robinson.
Madam Mayor?
Am I up? Or-
Yes, you're up.
When do we plan to make this decision? You know,
Agreed, that's what I'm trying to ask you guys. When do you wanna
I
make
think
it?
we're capable of making it, at least dividing up the priorities and putting a number so that we can budget. I've too, have talked to Commissioner Kerner, County, about his interest in Lake Worth's park. And we haven't had that meeting yet, but he's trying to get together. So can we assume that we want to spend some money on roads, the Park of Commerce, and parking, in addition to our casino park? And so let's work some compromise to allocate reasonable money to those 4 projects.
Okay. It's just hard to put when you don't have the project costs involved, how do you allocate the money to a project?
When we have a budget,
Madam,
you limit yourself as to what you can do. And we certainly have a budget. We don't have unlimited funds.
Well, how about this? How about we say that no further tax dollars, penny sales tax dollars can be spent until a project is defined and priced and done, and then we could allocate money to that project. But we don't spend any money until an actual plan and a cost comes forth before we do it.
Well, the problem is that we'll spend money finding how much we can't spend. I'm more interested in requests for proposals, specifically speaking about the casino park.
Madam Mayor?
Okay. That's good. And I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
This is good. It was needed. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Commissioner Hardy?
Jamie's here. Can I ask him some questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Jamie, come on down.
I give you the incredible Mr. Jamie Brown.
The hardest working.
The hardest working man in show business.
Good evening. Hi, Jamie. Can I ask you, we're under budget right now. Is there any guarantee that we'll be under budget when the project for the road bond? Is there any guarantee that we'll be under budget when the project concludes?
For the record, Jamie Brown, Public Services Director. Guarantee? I cannot guarantee that we will be under budget. We're actually just this week starting our year 3 projects. So we have years 3 and 4 left, obviously. The first 2 years were very good as far as coming in on time, under budget. There's no guarantee that that's going to be the case for years 3 and 4.
Okay. Could I ask you, between now and then, will the roads that didn't make the cut, are they likely to get worse between now and then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that mean, let me ask you this. What have you seen as far as labor costs and material costs for this stuff over the past 4, 5, 6 years? Have they gone up or gone down or stayed about the same?
They've gone up.
Okay.
The way we're dealing with that in the program, though, is we lock in unit prices
Okay.
when we do the contracts.
So what you're saying is if we don't have a contract right now, if we haven't locked in all that stuff, that if we end up taking some of this money to use it for roads, it'll be more expensive to do it 2, 3 years from now than it is today?
That, I mean, I can't guarantee, but that's the way it's tracking.
Okay. Juan is sitting 2 paces over from you. A year ago, you gave me a list of roads that fell between 60 to 69 on the PCI, on the Pavement Condition Index. These were roads that missed the cut for the bond, but they were clearly deficient. Okay. Do you remember the total dollar amount for these roads?
Back to Jimmy Brown.
Okay.
Well, the pavement condition index was, obviously what we had all of our roads rated.
Right.
In the bond program itself, 55 and below was considered a complete
Also, there
redo of
were
the road.
Wow. Okay, so there were more than even I got.
Well, that was basically everything that was deficient.
Right.
55 was kind of the cutoff that we established, where that means your road base, everything under the road, everything's gone. So the entire road needs to be redone. With the bond program, the 40 million we had allocated, that would basically get us up to a PCI of 60, meaning that every road in the city was
On
at
average.
least, yeah, at least at a 60.
Okay.
That's where that program is going to get us.
So roads like North D by the Scottish Rite, which is you could walk a block space and you'll find 20 potholes ankle deep, did not make the cut for the road bond.
Unfortunately, citywide, we had a lot of roads that fell well below that 55 cutoff.
Yeah.
So fixing all those, we're only going to get up to a 60. So there were a lot of roads that kind of fell in that low 60s area that we're just not going to be able to get to.
So I just want to put in there that the list that I got from staff amounted to about $10 million worth of roads, like $10,030,000 worth of roads that missed the cut for the bond.
Yep.
That okay. So as far as I understand, we're about $4 or $5 million under budget on the road bond, or at least we were at last juncture.
I'm not sure where that figure came from.
Okay.
4 or
All right.
5 million under?
3 to 4.
We're doing good.
Okay.
Can I?
So this is important.
I
I'm
will-
nearly done.
I'm really trying to
Okay.
stretch this for you because
It-
really the article is only about the allocation of money for the beach and casino park, which was making me say I think we need to bring back our top 4 things that came up on our list and actually go through them and talk about dollar allocation to the different projects and let staff be prepared to present what the scenarios are for those 4 allocations individually, since only one of these is on the agenda tonight.
What I will say is this.
But I must say that I like your area of questioning.
Sure. Yeah. What I will say is this: the road bond project can be way under budget, and even though we sold the bonds at a premium, we still don't have enough money to cover that stretch of roads that didn't make the cut for the road bond, and they were that price to do 2 years ago when I got that information from staff. They're almost undoubtedly more expensive to do today. They will almost undoubtedly be more expensive to do 2 years from now. I think we should go with our state. It was funny, Commissioner Maxwell said our priorities changed over the period of about a year and a half. The one thing that didn't change was the fact that all of us put roads number 1. And I want to see something from staff. Those are our stated preferences. They were our stated preferences a year and a half ago. They were our stated preferences 2 weeks ago. I want to see something from staff on how we're going to turn these preferences into policy like now, because we've received stuff from staff about how to turn other things that were less of a priority into policy, and we've been presented with opportunities to vote on those things. I want to be presented with an opportunity to vote on this idea of spending the money for the roads. And so my thing is, Madam Mayor, I agree with you. I don't think we should spend another dime of this money until we figured out how to spend every dime of this money. And I felt it should have been that way from the beginning. And
See, I don't think you can say that though, but I appreciate, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate here, but I'm saying, had we not had the ability, had some of these opportunities, they did not come up at that time. We did not know we had won that grant, and that grant was going to require a match in the Park of Commerce, and here we've been looking for funding for that for 30 years.
Sure.
So we lucked out. I mean, that happened for a reason. In it, had we been so staunch in saying no, but we have had the flexibility to do some things that weren't possible when it first became available, and that weren't even an option for us. So we can't look at the back and say, oh, that. But now I think moving forward to see what our priorities are, I'm in line with you in saying, let's take those 3-4 items now and let's put it to a vote and have people in the community start talking about what's important to them.
I agree with that. The flexibility is important. I would just rather we be presented with an opportunity to deviate from a plan that we've established. As Commissioner Maxwell said earlier, this body puts policies in place and also repeals and alters policies that are in place, right? And so I think if that argument applies there, it also applies here. I would rather us have had a plan in the beginning. And then if we were presented with an opportunity, we can always, as Commissioner Maxwell said, deviate from a policy that we've set, but we haven't had a plan in place. So for me, it's clearly roads, it's clearly the beach, and I think that the beach is going to require a significant sum of money. That's the whole 19 acres, all the solutions there, and those are my only priorities for this money. The beach, which includes the pool, the casino building, the loading area, the vehicular situation in front of the casino, and the roads. Those are my priorities. We've stated these priorities again. I want to see opportunities to vote on them.
Vice Mayor?
I'm a little concerned throwing money at the beach complex, the beach park, because that's how we ended up here. We didn't have enough money to do the complete plan, so therefore it wasn't done, and we got stuck with a pool and a design that doesn't work. Parking downtown, the larger package, a development that can include green parking, maybe some smart retail, small retail, livable workspace that creates something other than a seasonal downtown that benefits the entire city. That's what in my opinion, the parking looked like downtown. But we keep coming back to roads, to roads, to roads. Let's take the $14 million that we have and put it to roads. End of conversation. Done. That way, we have money. I hear from a lot of people up at the beach. They like it the way it is. At some point we'll still have to circle back around and figure out what we're going to do with the pool, what we're going to do with the staff, and where we're going to put the tables and chairs and all that. We're also going to have a conversation. We're going to come back and talk about where we're going to get money for a new tagline. But if it's roads, 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 let's put the $14 million into roads, be done with it, and move on.
City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. The original priority list is what we started working off of back in July of 17. And I guess it ranked out neighborhood roads, Park of Commerce, and downtown garage. That was pretty much the top three if you averaged out. Everybody's that correct one. The fact of the matter is, we have the data, and this is where I guess where staff, some of the miscommunication maybe is not happening. Communication is not happening right. We try to proceed with expenditures of millions of dollars, just like we did with the road program, by developing empirical data based on engineering and some science to try to get at our best estimates of what things cost. Because that's the first set of steps you go before you go to actually design, and then you go and put it out for bid. We're required to do those processes to get through a logical series of steps to actually come up with a product that gets executed. You pull the contract, it goes, and we pretty well know what it's going to cost. So when neighborhood roads came up, it was pretty self-explanatory from staff standpoint. We know what roads. We have the list. It's there. And I want to say it's more than $10 million. Jamie, I'm not sure about that number.
Well, that's what actually got us up to a PCI of 69.
Okay, that got us
So
all
was
the way
at
up to
that
69.
69. That was that next.
It wasn't doing
tranche.
all the roads.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And 69 is in a range there. But irrespective, that data exists. What didn't exist was downtown parking garage or parking solutions in the downtown core. And that involves a lot of maneuvering to not only figure out where to put something, what it should look like, how it should function, how you pay for it through revenues that you would generate from a parking system, or do you completely subsidize it? And that's a range of numbers from 2 million to 8 million potentially. That was your second priority. That was pretty amazing. And we thought we had tried to give you a lot of running room and options with some of the suggestions that we brought forward. And then the Park of Commerce is pretty self-explanatory, and you've hit on those things, but that's based on designs and work that we can quantify. Money coming from the state, that's very quantifiable.
And we've already done the work and the
And
survey work. And
absolutely.
that work, so.
The beach is one of those dark horses that came out of the pack, out of the field from behind here. It wasn't on the first list, I don't believe, as a priority of the top three. Just wasn't. We knew we were having, in July of 25, the top three, Beach Complex, Commissioner Amoroso had that on second, and Commissioner Robinson had his first at that time. So these things change and morph. We already knew we were having issues at the beach. We were trying to figure out how to address some of the design deficiencies and things and finish that project up, and then the pool kind of grew, and so that kind of came up, and when you look at the next set of priorities, things have kind of shifted around. But it's the same thing. You can't move forward with just saying you want to do something, or you pick a list of things. We need to go to the next levels of commitment in design and engineering to get your cost honed down. You have a limited pie. You can divide it up into the numbers you want to. You can do that now. I tell you what, I'd gladly bring back a single item roads project if this commission said, Mike, bring it, because I got that data. And Jamie'd be very happy. He's already happy now. But I never got that in any of the discussions that we've had individually or in any of these meetings, that was something y'all were ready to do or willing to do, that you needed to really get costs of things to try to squish it into this remaining pot of money. And we've tried to, if you look at the pot of money that's been spent, with the exception of land in the downtown core, which some of that may come back to us potentially, everything has been hitting the priority list with the exception of roads. Now this list now includes beach complex, and we're trying to catch up with that. That data exists. Let's have a sit-down discussion with the data we've created and make some choices. It's not that.
There you go. Well said. Thank you.
Let's get to it.
Done.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right. Let's move on to our, you know what? I didn't do the ones for the last one either, because they're discussions.
So.
Because there's no vote on them.
There's no vote, and there's no future attempt to make a vote or a direction. So tonight we rehashed our inability to make a decision.
What's a discussion?
Well, you put it up as a discussion, as instead of an agenda item to vote. You said a discussion. A discussion doesn't warrant a vote. So I would suggest we put it on an agenda item as how to spend the money with each individual item that we've already come to pass. But I think that the discussion was to have them come back with a plan that shows how much, I thought we were having a presentation on the beach from our prior consultant who came in and gave us options of what different things would cost so that we could see what those different things.
And we know we can't afford.
We did that.
And we know we can't afford it. Much of what was proposed.
I was told that we could look at each of the individual pieces to see if we could choose from different items and put them together in a comprehensive plan to see what the ask would be for. How much would it cost for each of those individual things?
Well, what's the point of that conversation if we're not going to spend any money on it? It just doesn't make sense. We have to commit to a number, or at least a budget that we're going to talk about it. If we're not going to commit to it, then why have people come back with a plan that we can't afford? Shopping for something that you can't afford is a waste of time. Some people like to shop. I don't.
Then there's not enough money left. But based on all the decisions, pardon me. Based on all the decisions, I'm saying, isn't it about finding a solution to the beach, not just the pool, but finding a solution to a failing beach project? Isn't it addressing all the issues? If we're going to spend the money, shouldn't we spend the money on the deficiencies that we have, that we were handed down?
Separate conversation.
If we're going to spend the money on a comprehensive plan that we can't afford right now based on what's left in the sales tax money, shouldn't we be looking forward to addressing all the problems at once, putting a budget together and solving the problem?
We already know that the problem is bigger than what we can afford. So what we have to do is decide what we're going to do to attempt to make the beach better. And how much we're going to spend to make the roads better, and whether we want to put any more money into the CRA area of parking is up to us. But we're just talking in circles if we don't put some numbers behind the decisions that need to be made.
But if you're already saying if if you're already saying that we can't afford what we want to do at the beach, which is a pool, which you're in support of, I'm in support of, if you're already saying that, then how?
No, I'm saying we need to put a number of, and I'm willing to compromise, but we need to start with a number and then work down to whether it's all going to be for a pool, or it's going to be for less of a pool, or no pool, or the other improvements in the casino park. But we have to start with a budget, and we haven't established a budget yet. Commissioner Hardy wants $4 million for roads. That's a budget. I'm sure Jamie would be satisfied to get $4 million to fix roads.
Commissioner Hardy?
And I would love to give it to him.
Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. How do you shop for a house? How do you shop for a house? You.
It was, and
Oh,
I miss.
This is, go ahead.
And I kind of, first of all, I didn't want to do this, but the item is on funding for the casino park requested by Commissioner Robinson. We've obviously given direction to the city manager as what we'd like to see them come back with as a plan to come back with some actual items, which are our priorities, to assign and allocate dollars in an agenda item where we will vote. Done?
I wasn't getting that, but.
Done. Got it? Okay. City Attorney, do you have a
There's
report?
public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't do a vote on it, so.
No, you can still. They're still supposed to be able to wait.
So, can I ask the city manager if he feels he's got a direction of where we're going with the casino?
I understand the mayor's direction.
You understand the mayor's direction?
Mhm.
Was there a consensus? Did you get a feel of a consensus?
Okay, these public comment cards.
It's an awkward question.
Yeah, I'll pull the public comment cards. It's at the discretion when it's a discussion item, not a voting item, whether or not to call public comment or not. I will call them because you've all been so patiently waiting. Just remember, keep it to the casino and the spending of dollars at the casino project, not any other projects. Thank you. Cheryl Rashkin, followed by Richard Curcio, followed by Todd Townsend, followed by Mr. Vivian.
Cheryl Rashkin, 1302 South Palmway. Thank you, Madam Mayor. You're getting the point across to everyone that if we want to do something, we have to have the budget, and the person that's giving the budget, you've given direction to, so thank you.
Mr. Curcio, followed by Todd Townsend.
Madam Mayor, Richard Curcio, 720 South Palmway. Agreed. I mean, we don't know how much it's going to cost for us to do the beach. We know Chris Zimmerman gave us 4 out of his 7 scenarios were $18.4 million and down for the first 4. And that included 30% added on top of the basis, 10% for escalation and 20% for contingency. So the base costs of those projects went from $10 million to $15 million for the first 4 that he gave us. The tie line is already taken care of, by the way, because we have the extra $5 million that we're saving with our new contracted bill. You see Stanton drops off. That's another $1.5 million a year. We can bond out on a revenue basis with that same cash of funds, somewhere upwards of $100 million. We have an $80 million spend, $20 million for the tie line, and we have another, the rest of that would go towards the Harding. I understand, but this was mentioned up here during the discussion. I have the floor, sir. We mentioned this during the discussion tonight, so that's the math behind the electric utility. The electric utility needs 0 penny sales tax dollars, 0. And we need to, and neither does the sewer, neither does the water project, none of that stuff. The discussion needs to be held to what our assets are. The beach is one. The golf course, I haven't heard anyone say anything about the world-class position that we have at the golf course.
Quiet in the chambers,
Thank you,
please.
Madam Mayor. We just need to concentrate on what the budgets would be. We need to look at our operating units, what needs to help. This is found money. You know, we don't have the budget to fix the stuff that's deteriorated on us over these periods of years. So what are our priorities with our operating units, and what can we use this money for? The roads, we really should wait until the end, until we see how much money we have left over. Maybe it's $5 million left over in budget savings, plus the $1 million that we got in the premiums on the bonds being sold. That's another $6 million that we can put towards roads. Let's wait till the end till we see that. But let's look at our operating units and see where we need to put the money with that as that goes.
Thank you. Todd Townsend, followed by Mr. Vivian.
No fighting out here. Todd
Quiet in the
Townsend,
chambers, please.
Todd Townsend, 502 South J Street. I think that we're missing a whole great big market. Everybody's talking like we're somewhere in the middle of the country. We've got the ocean right there. We need to spend this every dollar of this $10 million on the beach, like the commissioner says here. And that investment is going to go towards what? Tourism. We're not going after any tourism. We need to go for the tourist dollar. There's things that we can do at the beach that are going to bring tourists here. That's what's going to do it. And under tourism is going to be money for roads. There's going to be more money for schools. Everything falls under that umbrella. We're at the beach. Let's use the beach. And as far as, the beach has been sitting just like that for a very long time. And I feel like it's been very irresponsible for maybe current and maybe former commissioners here. But the longer you've been sitting on the dais with the beach sitting like that, the more responsible and irresponsible you actually have been. So let's do something about the beach. That'll bring all the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vivian, followed by Susan Ona, followed by Peggy Fisher.
No, it's not all right. I'm Michael Vivian at 2381 Sunset Avenue. I'm still bringing my naivete to this form of government, and I find it very exciting and challenging to understand, such as having two agendas for one meeting. That's fascinating. And I want to refer to number 12 sub B, which when I read it, after having attended the meeting last time, I thought was trying to misdirect us. I thought when we were discussing a swimming pool last time, there were a number of ideas that I hadn't thought about before. I've only been aware of a swimming pool at the casino park for about 2 months, and it is a shame that it is in the condition that it is, and it is a good idea to improve it. But from what I heard at the last meeting was that we have other parks. There are other people who want to see a pool at a place that's more convenient to them. I don't know if they're right. I don't know what the idea is, but I said, wow, all these people have come up to this microphone and said, we want a pool somewhere else. We want something other than what we have a broken one of. And I thought we were going to consider that, but they haven't come tonight. Have they? Are any of you for a pool? There was a lot of excitement, as well as I still want to get a copy of that poster of Save Our Pool. But in my dreams maybe, or for Christmas. Thank you all.
Thank you. Susan Ona, followed by Peggy Fisher, followed by Anna.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to all of us, and I forgot how much fun it was to come to a commission meeting. I just want to say thank you to the commissioners who have let us, those of us who came to them with the idea of the pool and revising the complex up at the beach. I think it's an important issue that we need to deal with, and we came as an interested group in the community, and you listened to us, and we appreciate that. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to represent the people and their concerns. I looked over the plans that were done by the CPZ, I think it was, who brought up these 4 plans again, as I had months ago, and I realized that there are a lot of those ideas in there that are good, that we can perhaps, I would think, maybe sit down with them as a citizen advisory group and talk to them about our ideas, which I think we have some good ones amongst the people of the city. Very talented architects and people who have good vision. And I think it would be great, you talk about the previous times that were plans that didn't work. Maybe it was because that nobody was consulted. And I think this time, we really need to get people up there who can sit down with them and say, this is what we'd like, and these are some of our great ideas, and perhaps working together that way we can, and then to bring that to the next meeting when we discuss this issue again. rather than saying we'll have a meeting to discuss it. And no one has a plan, but I certainly would be willing to work on that plan and with the CPZ and looking at the different aspects along with a lot of other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peggy Fisher, followed by Anna.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. I'd like to thank Commissioner Robinson for bringing this forward again, although we went through a big circle, as he said, talking in circles and repeating yourselves over and over and over. The beach complex was, as been said many, many times, a failed project in how it was done. But it was done what? It opened what? 13 in 2012, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and we still have a problem. You know, it's if we're never going to address it, if we're never going to develop a plan of how to address it, then just say that and put your money into buying land and building a parking garage for places downtown where people can't go because they can't afford the rents. You know, come on. This is your job as elected official, elected by the people in this city. It is your job to get together, give very detailed Peter Pan language directions if you need to, but it's your job. And to continue saying, well, we don't have enough money to fix the beach. We don't have enough money to fix the beach. You have money to fix the bathrooms. Make acceptable bathrooms up there. Take one bite of it and do something positive. Rather than say, oh, let's go buy this lot over here, or let's go buy all these houses over here. That $2 million could have redone the bathrooms. I just think you've got to start talking and making decisions rather than fighting with each other in how you speak and how you want to up one another. You got to try and work together. It may be hard, but you do have to do it for the citizens.
Anna, followed by Joe Egley.
Oh, okay. Anna, 35 South J Street, number 15, Florida 33460. I really like what she said about the togetherness part. The togetherness is pretty important. I was just wondering, you know, how just the difference between the cost of the casino and the revenue. I'm still interested in applying the research with the United States Census Bureau statistics of, you know, 4,422 of us, you know, were really low income earners, and there's a drug problem in our city. But anyway, just, you know, as far as, you know, some of the revenue towards, you know, like really like has to be healthy foods, you know, like broccoli, V8, apples, oranges, waters, and milks, and really getting this, you know, this drug problem away, you know, not feeding into it. But another proposal I have is to create a recycling board, to create a recycle board. Recycling is something that I've been doing a lot of just by pretty much taxing the cigarettes and taxing the alcohol. There would still be an enormous cigarette and alcohol problem, and they create the most garbage. So I've started, you know, just after months and months of recycling, I'm getting now to the bottom of the seven plastics breakdown. You know, the polypropylene, it's a methyl, polyethylene, it's a methylene.
Let's
There's
bring it
3
back
of
to the
them.
pool if we could.
Oh, sure. Well, just maybe some of the revenue, perhaps some of the revenue could create a recycle board, and maybe we could tax cigarettes, liquor, and wine. They create the most garbage. So.
Thank you very much, Anna. Joe Egley. Excuse me, the Honorable Joe Egley.
Joe Egley, 2880. We were only slightly off topic tonight on item 12. But I think what you need to consider, regardless of what your priorities are, is that you need to do your due diligence, especially at Casino Park, as it's stated there. Simply because you're going to have to take the pool area out of the casino park. Okay, and the first thing you probably want to do is check with your underwriters, because you're going to find that you're going to have to probably set up a reserve for your self-insurance, better known as a deductible. But then you need to find out what their stop loss is, so far as how much they'll pay in case you have a death or something of that nature at the pool. Now, you need to find these items out before you allocate any money towards that topic or any other topic. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. City Attorney, do you have a report?
No, thank you.
City Manager?
No, ma'am.
All right, then I'll adjourn this meeting with your motion and second.
Seconded.
There you go. First and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We've got a quick break, and then we're back with our Electric Commission meeting. Mr. Vivian, that is what the second agenda is. We have another upcoming meeting right after.
those? Those are cool. I got those.
Madam Mayor, we're live.
All right, everyone. Round two. I'd like to call this Tuesday, February 19th, Electric Utility City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy.
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Easy.
If everyone would please rise for the pledge led by Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions, deletions, or reordering? Seeing there are none, we'll move on to the presentation for a strip update. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. We have today here with us Walt Gill, who's our Assistant Director for T&D, and Walt is going to be leading us with a update on our system hardening and reliability improvement project. He'll give an overview, and I'll add some commentary as we go, but this is his show.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, Walt Gill for the record, Assistant Director, Transmission and Distribution. Last time we met was last July when we gave you the full-blown review of the SHRIP program. And since then, what the team has been heavily involved in the design of the new system and where we're going with the new system. The first slide of the presentation, as soon as I found the mouse. You might remember this, this slide is, the first task is to find out what our poorest performing circuits were. So out of the 41 circuits that we have in the system, we ranked them by 5 separate categories, specifically the number of customers affected, breaker operations, outage minutes per customers, total outage minutes, and number of outages on the circuit. From this poorest performing circuits ranking, we then developed an estimated cost per circuit analysis. There are some, you'll see some abnormal numbers associated with some of these circuits. Specifically, you might see one down there for the 5002 of estimated utility investment per customer. It shows 13,000 per customer on that circuit. The reason why that is because in all actuality, there's only 100 customers that are tied to that circuit. But downstream that circuit feeds is another 2,500 customers. So everybody is going to be benefiting throughout the whole process. So in order to show what the cost was that we're investing in for the customers, we had to take it by each circuit and who's attached to that circuit.
So let me add some commentary here. So as you look at this data, then you see on the left side is the circuit number, of course, the number, and followed by the number of customers per circuit in that circuit, how much we're going to be investing on a planning level basis on that particular circuit. And then if we divide the number of customers by the dollars, you get the dollars that we're investing on a per customer basis. The last column gives the anticipated completion date for the work that we would do on each one of those circuits. The type of work that we do on these circuits is improving the insulation, adding breakers or sectionalizers to break the circuits up into smaller pieces, and then add reclosers to be able to reclose around a fault and add trip savers as well. So a number of improvements that happen to each one of these circuits. And buried within here is also the work that Walt and the team will be doing on the substations to improve the substations that supply these circuits as well. So it's a rather large project.
So with the SHRIP project, what we're trying to accomplish with the entire SHRIP project, Ed and I have discussed this. This is actually our new slogan that we're pushing out there is fewer outages, fewer customers, quicker return. That's what we're focusing on. Hence the breakup of the circuits and the humongous circuits that we got out there into smaller, more manageable circuits. So the poorest performance circuit based on the ranking is the 26B1 West 13. It feeds the western area of I-95. Serves approximately 1,600 customers. It's, like I said, it's currently ranked number 1 on the list. Phase 1 of the design is completed. And we're currently working with contractors on the construction costs. Phase 2 and 3 are in design and moving and progressing as anticipated. Respectfully ranked second, third, and fourth is the 2061 6004, 6003, and 6001. This also feeds the Western I-95 area, the Village of Palm Springs. Total of 5,900 customers are on all three of these circuits. We are in the process of pole and recloser installation. This will be occurring over the next couple of weeks, several weeks. This will reduce the number of customers affected by any one outage, as well as allow system operations to improve the reliability of the circuits by allowing system operations to switch around the affected area, restoring more customers quicker. Am I one up?
Yeah, you're one up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm moving too fast on the slides here. Sorry. There we go. So those are the three circuits that I was just now talking about. Sorry about that. Yes, sir.
Sure. So I'm having trouble with my neck or with my vision here. But how many customers that are in this circuit live in Lake Worth, municipal Lake Worth?
These customers are actually in the county portion of our territory.
Okay.
We are getting ready to get into the city portion.
Okay. And so I guess my question was, do the functioning of these circuits affect the functioning of circuits to the interior of municipal Lake Worth?
Yes, they do. They allow tying opportunities in the event that there's an issue on one of the circuits, and they allow the reliability. They bring up the reliability by allowing us to tie different circuits together within the city and outside the city.
Okay, all right.
So to add some more discussion on that, so depending on the circuit, there may be interconnections or cascading effects to adjacent or adjoining circuits.
Okay.
In our evaluation, though, of where to focus on system reliability, it was done purely on the basis of the worst performing circuit in the system, regardless of location.
Right.
And in trying to improve our overall reliability statistics, to start with the worst and work our way from there to the best, improving as we go.
Okay. Now, I guess my next question was going to be, if we, for example, and I understand we've already begun on this track, but maybe in the future, if there's another wave of work to be done, which I understand there may be, I'm not sure, but could we, unless these circuits affect how circuits inside our borders work, could we start with the worst performing circuits that affect the greatest number of Lake Worth residents?
That's certainly something that could be done, although that's not the way we looked at our focus.
I understand.
Was to begin
Right.
on the
Because your
worst
utility extends.
regardless of demographic, geography, was to say which are the worst ones, and then work from there, and bring, because it's the worst circuits that tie up the most amount of, if you will, resources in going out to repair,
Sure.
which then leaves that other part of the city uncovered in the event of multiple outages at one time.
Yeah, you guys have a lot to think about. I was just wondering if that was something that entered into your thought process, and I'm wondering how members of this commission.
I would have to say that they're all paying customers of our operation, and as a business operation, we can't differentiate. In fact, they're probably paying more money than our residents are for their power, because they have upcharges from their own municipalities, and also because the outages in our further discussion today, a lot of them happen, and what's happening in our community is because of the lack of attention, I think, in some of those areas outside our city. We might have taken a Lake Worth priority first, I don't know for a fact or not, in the past, but their failing infrastructure is causing our failing infrastructure. And it's all ours, by the way. It's not theirs and ours, it's all ours.
I can also add that don't focus on just that we're just working the West 13 first. There's going to be numerous projects going on at the same time, both inside the city limits proper as well as in the county.
Okay. We're working concurrently. So generally speaking, and this is in a very general sense, the 26 kV sections of the city, of the municipal utility, tend to be the least reliable because of the way that they were built and designed. The older 4 kV circuits don't have as many outages, but they do carry much higher loads. So they're pushing their limits in terms of their ability to deliver energy, whereas on the 26 kV system, we're pushing the limits on reliability. They're somewhat unreliable, and we need to improve their reliability. But at the same time, we're also addressing the 4 kV circuits. So we need to reinforce our sub-transmission system and then reinforce these large circuits, rebuild the substations, and then work our way out from there.
Vice Mayor?
And I agree with you, Madam Mayor. You know, quite often we hear about issues that fall into the city proper that have an issue that causes an issue, but it's in our western communities that actually caused it, and or on a Florida power line that, you know, connects to. I think you answered the question, but those western stations, those western issues, what are the biggest issues? Why are they older? Are they, you know?
The issue is that the 26 kV is what when we use the term, it's twitchy. It's much more sensitive to animal contact, to vegetation contact, to lightning strikes.
And that's predominantly in the western community.
Correct,
That we
and,
serve.
and that leads to a quick fault. On the eastern side, those circuits tend to run at higher amperages and will literally burn clear on an animal contact or a palm frond or a tree branch or something like that. Whereas the 26 side is much more sensitive, tends to trip out. So the focus on the 26 kV circuits, particularly these big ones carrying 1,500 plus customers, is to be able to segment those circuits so that the affected segment is smaller. Right now, we don't have that ability. We lose the entire circuit as opposed to a segment. So we want to be able to segment it into smaller components and then reclose the segment that's not affected, that hasn't had the fault, reclose it to an adjoining circuit. So literally route around the fault. So we want to reduce the number of outages that we have, then reduce the number of customers that are affected by any one outage, and for the customers that are affected, bring them back sooner. So that's the hierarchy of thinking as we go through this, working our way from the poorest performing circuit down to the best. A lot of these things we're working in parallel. If we look at the schedule, it's about over a 5-year period, 4 to 5 year period of addressing all of the circuits in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we've done this one. So the next circuit, Commissioner Hardy, this actually gets into the city now, is our West 05 circuit. This circuit feeds the entire north end of the city proper. Right now, we are completed with phase 1 design, and contractors are mobilizing and getting staged up. And as soon as materials get here, we will be letting the contractors go to town on phase 1 design. Phase 2 design is already in the process. That's the railroad section that runs along the FEC Railroad. That is in design, and then we'll tackle on phase 3, which is right in front of the powerhouse. Yep. The last circuit we're focusing on right now is the East 09. This feeds the central part of the city, west I-95, Lake Worth High School, Park Commerce area. Services 1,350 customers, has one substation, 7th Avenue North, on that substation. Substation and relay protection are 90% completed. Circuit 04 design is in progress, followed by the 0702 and the 0701. And then we are also in the process, actually today we met with contractors and the engineering firm to go ahead and start nailing down construction costs as well as schedules for this build out.
Let me go back to slide number 3. I want to touch on something. So slide number 3 was the estimated cost per circuit, right, at poor performing circuits. So what we're doing is we're for the projects we're undertaking in the early years, it's the first year or two, and all of these, we began with a conceptual level estimate, and then we engaged consulting engineers to help us refine those conceptual estimates into planning estimates. And then some of those projects, as Assistant Director Gill has pointed out, are now out for bid, and we're getting numbers back from contractors. So as we refine those costs based on actual bids, we can do some value engineering, but then translate that data those data points to the future projects we intend to do to continue to hone our estimates. So these numbers will continue to move as we get better and better information, and we'll continue to layer out the projects at the pace at which we can afford to execute them.
How do you calculate, how would you read that estimated utility investment per customer?
That's simply the division of total cost for that particular circuit by the number of customers that are directly connected to that circuit. Recognizing, though, that, as Walt pointed out, on some of those where you see a very high number, for example, if you look at the 5002, you see a number of 13,000. That particular circuit only has 100 customers. But it also feeds a much larger group and another circuit downstream. So it's carrying a big investment, but it's serving much more than those direct 100 customers are connected directly to it. So we had to break this up somehow. It's not that we're actually spending that much just for 100 customers. It feeds all the other ones downstream.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a cautionary note to say, hey, these numbers are going to continue to move, and we'll adjust them as we get the actual construction estimates back and continue to refine these things and adjust our spend while staying within the budgetary guidelines that we have to maintain our fund balances, our coverage ratios, and we'll be layering this in.
Vice Mayor?
And I just wanted to comment, going back to what you had said, you're starting with the largest amount of customers for the most part first, because that's the, when things happen, we tend to get calls. If you have 10 people down, you get less calls. If you have 15,000 people down, you get a lot more calls. So, thank you for, trying to focus on, the larger amounts and the biggest lines.
So that's a very good point. So if you just look at the first 4 lines of this analysis, so you got the West 13, the 6004, 6003, 6001, and you look at that 1,600 customers, 1,500 customers, 2,600 customers, 1,800 customers on our 4 poorest performing circuits. When the power goes out, all those customers want to call us and make sure that we know that they're out, right? That's a lot of phone calls flooding us, and we're pushing our crews out there as fast as we can to find the lizard or the bird or the palm frond or the burned up jumper on that line, right? That's an awful lot of work. So that's where we're focusing, right, to cure those issues there. So as we've talked about before, last month, we have our reliability statistics that we track our performance. So we track our performance month to month. We know that these are the worst performing circuits. We know this is where we need to focus first to get our performance to where it needs to be.
Okay.
So it's a data-driven approach, but it also matches up with what the crews feel every day. That's where they're rolling to for problems. That's where they occur.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
And that is the end. That is the end of the presentation. So, any other questions? I'll be more than happy to answer.
I think we're ready to move on to 4B, the update on the TPTL-1 transformer.
Okay, no slides on this one. It's a verbal update. Approximately 3 weeks ago, on a Saturday morning, a rainy Saturday morning at about 6 a.m., we experienced a failure of our TPTL-1. That's internal code speak for one of our big transformers. That transformer failed. System operations reacted very quickly, as did the call-out function. We brought additional people in. We routed the power around that, and were able to restore the city. We lost about 13,000 customers that morning for about an hour and a half.
Yes.
Subsequent inspection revealed that there were some potential external issues with the transformer. We did some additional testing, made some external changes, lightning arresters, things like that, and attempted to put the transformer back in service that Saturday evening as the crews worked in the rain. We found that the problems were more substantial internal to the transformer. So we had to isolate it, do additional disassembly, bring in some subject matter experts, and by Wednesday, midday, had determined that the fault was internal to the transformer and that it was not repairable on site. That outage put us in a precarious position because that's a critical transformer that we need for meeting the summer load. So around the mid-May timeframe, having that transformer back in service will be critical to maintaining the reliability that we'd like to have on the system. So we began a search right away nationwide for a replacement transformer. So right now that transformer is out of service. It's been partially disassembled and ready for removal, pending discussion of another item on the agenda, which we'll get to in a minute. So it's being removed as we speak, disassembled.
Based on our discussions, Ed, I really think we need that thing like we used to have in college when you could draw on it And the light would go up on the screen. What were those things?
Overhead projector.
The overhead projector.
Overhead
yeah.
projector. Because in describing it, for people to be able to see where that transformer is in comparison to the others and what feeds into it, I don't know if you guys got the same
We did.
fantastic drawing experience that I got. But it's really, I think we should include those in our meetings if possible, because it makes it so clear for people at home. Can we do that?
Ed's quite the Rembrandt, yes.
No, but it makes it a lot more understandable, so when you see where those transformers tie into and where they're coming from for people at home.
We'll see if anybody at the library still has one of those machines around. We'll bring it up.
They do actually.
Well, with all these books today and sketchpad things, we should be able to integrate something like that.
So we'll come back to this on the new business section, but we have identified a location of a spare that we can bring in, and we'll be talking about that a few items down.
All right, well
about 2
then,
minutes.
let's move on to public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. We have a card from Peggy Fisher.
Well, I guess I'll yell because there's no microphone.
Where'd it go? Oh, hold on
I
one.
don't care.
No, we need you to have it, so please.
We do. Somebody stole the North Bishop.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. There has been some work in the alleyway between North A Street and B Street in terms of pole replacements. And in that process, the Fifth Avenue Greenway has been significantly torn up. That greenway was never given a lot of love to begin with. It's only 2 blocks. It's where the kids go to school. But right now there's ruts, there's trees that have been knocked down. They may be planning on putting up another pole because next to property off of B Street, there's a power pole laying against the side of the greenway. And as a member of that neighborhood, I just would like to have someone confirm to the neighborhood that the greenway will be fully restored and taken care of ASAP. We are in school and kids do go through there, and when it rains, having mud and dirt rolling down the hill is not the best thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other cards? Seeing there are none, we shall move on to our approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 8A, purchase order for the new 138 kV to 27 kV step-down transformer for the main substation.
So moved.
Second, so it's moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
There you go. Item 8B, authorization to FGU to sell natural gas bundled with FGT transportation capacity to Peninsula Energy Service Company on behalf of Lake Worth.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Do you want to tell us how wonderful you are?
I would, but this is probably not the best setting for that.
I think you guys are doing okay.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'm sorry, this is for C, not B.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. That's why I haven't. Okay. Item 8C, ordinance numbers. Oh, City Attorney, you have to read the ordinance?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2019-03 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, repealing and replacing Article 20 of Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances in order to reconstitute the city's Electric Utility Advisory Board, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Move to postpone.
I made a motion.
I think we made our motion at the same time.
No, I was ahead of you.
We should maybe get some audio
Let's do it.
technician to
live playback.
determine
We need a live playback.
who began their bilabial fricative M first. I don't know, but I think we made our motion at the same time for all practical
So
purposes.
City Attorney, Madam City Attorney, they made their motions at the same time.
I believe that would fall into your discretion as the mayor and the chair of this meeting to determine which motion was made first, or to go ahead and take alternative motions.
Yay.
Because our rules don't cover a tie and a motion made.
No ties, move first.
What were the motions?
We've got a motion to postpone and a motion to approve. Okay, we've got a motion on, the motion to approve is the motion that was started. I heard the voice, but I will make that motion. There was no second?
Second.
Was there a second? Okay, so the motion to approve is a second. Now we've got a presentation explaining what this item is.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, we brought this item forward in trying to figure out the next evolutionary steps of the advisory board process for the electric utility with the direction we're taking. And as I've explained in the past, having this meeting was part of those changes for transparency to really have the board of directors, which is you, sit in public hearing of the items that the director and the staff brings forward. In talking with y'all individually, it became evident that there was still a desire to maintain an advisory board for various items. I know most recently the issue of net metering was something that y'all were interested, stated at the last meeting about having the UAB look into. So we came up with this particular, working with the attorney, outline for this group, and it goes from a 7-member down to a 5-member board, that each one of you gets one membership appointee, and it can be called on an ad hoc basis either by the commissioner or the electric utility director to review various items that you're choosing.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes. So I had a meeting with you on Wednesday, and I got a preliminary agenda, and while we discussed this topic, I don't recall that this topic was going to be on the agenda. So my agenda doesn't, it shows A and B, it does not show item C. And I do think that before we put this on the agenda, the folks who've been serving on the board should be advised as to this being on here. In addition to that, I have an issue with it being shrunk from 7 members to 5. In addition to that, I have an issue with the way in which the meetings are going to be called. They won't be regular meetings. They'll be basically if either the commission or the electric utility director wants there to be a meeting of this board, then the board will meet. That's tough for folks, frankly, when they want to know that there's something regular happening in their schedule on a monthly or a quarterly basis. And frankly, my feeling is that the EUAB has been a constructive board, and I recognize that some things maybe shouldn't come before the EUAB that are more or less perfunctory. What kind of polls are we going to get, or that kind of stuff? Okay, but I still think that there should be an advisory board that meets on a regular basis that discusses the big picture policy issues for this electric utility. And I'm not a fan of what I've read this evening in this particular ordinance. So I would like to, first of all, not adopt this ordinance. At the very least, postpone it. Okay. In addition to that, I think that the regular meetings of the EUAB should be resumed because we have not changed the ordinance. And so there's no reason for this board to stop meeting without being given direction from this board, from the dais, in the form of a vote taken in public after discussion had in public. So I can't support, there are issues that I get the idea that their role needs to be potentially more focused on the big picture items. I get that, but I don't think this is the best way to do that. And I think that they should have been informed that this was going to be on the agenda.
I would agree with Commissioner Hardy on the fact of notification. That's just another one of those kind of smacks in the face that were, I'm sure, unintended, but happened because of scheduling or whatever it is. I'm sorry, but I'm not a fan of the way that happened. The other thing too is that going back in history, and this comes to no surprise to you, city manager, or you, utility director, because I've been consistent throughout the whole thing. This conversation goes back to the original creation of the Electric Utility Advisory Board. You think the beach is controversial? You should have seen back then when we talked about the electric utility. That was, I mean, it was just as much of a litmus test as anything else in the world. And creating that advisory board helped us bridge a major gap in regards to transparency, because there were so many different conversations going on with the future of the utility, what had been done by previous administrations, what future things people wanted to happen, what people perceived was happening, which wasn't happening, and it was a whole big giant cluster ring. And and so by creating that board, we actually gave them the opportunity to go in and look at those contracts and do those things, and it was a really good thing. We were very instrumental. I know the Vice Mayor was there, Vice Mayor Pro Tem was there, and we were standing side by side to say we have to make this thing happen, because we're not going to be able to move forward in anything unless we do. So from you, I can be faulted for this, but you know me, when it comes to historical, perspective on certain things, I just feel that they stepped up in a time, that board stepped up in a time when we really needed them, and that I feel like just because we're taking new leaps and new bounds to go off without giving every original board member the opportunity at least to be a part of whatever you're trying to create, or keep it as is. I mean, I think they've done the job. They've done a great job. They need your leadership to explain to them the directions that we're going in the future. And there were probably the most, outside of planning and zoning and quasi-judicial boards like historic resources preservation, they were one of the first other boards outside that quasi-judicial place that actually helped and transitioned and doused the fire and brought facts to the thing. And I thank all the members that, I don't know, there was one here that was from the very beginning, Peggy. But I don't know. I think we kind of have to have a conversation about this, guys. I'm uncomfortable about this, Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, I want to parrot essentially everything you've already said. I'm not terribly happy about the place we are at right now with this discussion, as far as I guess ultimately is going to be some sort of a transition. You are absolutely correct. We owe a debt of gratitude to the members of the Juice Board. They were there on day one, and they had to put up with quite a bit of stuff over the years. If it wasn't, trying to help better educate and inform the public they were dealing with, they were having issues in some cases with previous administrators as far as cooperation is concerned, and I hate the word transparency, but perhaps the lack of transparency that was taking place in the early days. So they've gone through a lot, but they've also contributed a lot. And actually, and this is no slight to our P&Z board or our hysterical board, but
historical.
I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. While both of those
point of order.
Both of those boards have served us very well over the years, and they do a great job. I think that I would rank the Juice Board a little bit above that, given the magnitude of the situation we have with our electric utility. Look, the optics of how we got here tonight are really, really bad, and I cannot defend any part of that. I don't know how it started or what the genesis of that was, but the optics are not good. And as Ms. Fisher mentioned earlier this evening, and she's absolutely correct, these folks deserved a little bit better than what they got. So I agree with all of you on that point. I guess my concern is, is postponing this really going to get us to a different conclusion? If it's simply a matter of the number of board members, that's something that maybe can be addressed tonight. But I don't know that, postponing it, I mean, the damage has been done as far as the optics or how we want to, and again, I'm not pointing the finger and trying to be negative towards staff or anybody. This is just a bad situation.
Yeah.
Okay. I just don't know what postponing it is going to do for any of us. We're not going to be able to fix, if you will, any wounds that we've inflicted or any, discontent or whatever. I think that at the very least, we owe 1,000 apologies, 1,000 apologies to each and every member of that board for the way things have transpired. I guess my statement is, if postponing this is somehow going to fix, in place of the apologies, then let's do it. But if it's just going to drag it out a little bit further, I'm not really sure that we need to do that. But that's kind of how I feel. So I want the folks on that board, and Ms. Fisher's been there since day one. There's a couple folks that have been there since day one. We're talking 6-7 years. Okay, they should have been treated better, and I'm really upset about the optics. But you know what? We don't always get it right. Sometimes we get it right, but in this particular case, as far as how things were transpired, I won't use the word handled, because I don't think anything that happened was intentional. I don't think anything that took place as far as this transition or whatever, this evolution, was done in a mean-spirited or ugly way. But it is a situation that we do have to move on. Times have changed, and our utility system is in a much better place, in large part, and mostly large part, because of the people that were on that board for these 6 or 7 years. And I wish I could figure out a better way to handle this, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
And I agree with Commissioner Maxwell and you. I want to thank the UAP board and you I want to thank the UAP board for all that they've done. Now that I truly believe that we should have, the hand in, a little bit more hands on. That's why it's kind of moved here. I think we need to carry on with the UAP board. I have no problem with, the 5 new members and or old members. I've talked to quite a few of them. Some of them would like to carry on. Some of them don't want to carry on. And that's an option for them. I actually have 2 appointments. I want to, thank everyone, but the 2 appointments have brought, so much to the city. But I've said from day one with all boards, we need a little bit more direction from this dais. We need to, from the tree board. I've said over and over, the tree board was to plant canopy and to identify canopy and where it needed, and we don't even give that direction. I think we need to, have some conversation on all boards. This new board that we're looking at creating tonight, we make policy. I think we need to sit down and make policy. I don't have a problem with giving them a set agenda to start. We have some issues that are on the table that we need to discuss, and also give them set dates. I don't think they need to be there at our beck and call. I don't see why they can't meet. We do have some agenda items that I think we can give them to work on, that are priorities that have already been discussed, and set dates. I don't think they need to, work when we tell them to work. I think they can get started tomorrow with a meeting, and I think we just need to make sure that we have the clear direction from us.
Commissioner Hardy?
A few things. Postponing this would give us opportunity to change this ordinance in between now, or prepare potential amendments, because again, when I met with staff, this was not on the agenda that I received from staff. So that's number one. Exactly. So that's one useful thing about postponing this. The other thing is, if you want them to meet on set dates, then what you should not do is vote to approve this, because it says here that the board will basically be an ad hoc board, and they'll meet whenever it is that the electric utility beckons them, whether it's them, I'm sorry, I have the floor, whether it's the electric utility or whether it's the commission. There's nothing about when this board will meet in this ordinance. So it could potentially be the case that we pass this ordinance tonight and we struggle to figure out when they meet, or the electric utility director, whoever that is at any time, doesn't feel the need to have them meet. Now, in that context, here's the interesting thing. It says here that if any member of the electric, and this is section 236, subsection B, line 78 through 81, it says, if any member of the electric utility advisory board shall fail to be present at 3 consecutive meetings, or at 25% of the meetings of the board held within a 12-month period, the city clerk shall declare the member's office vacant, and the city commission shall promptly fill such a vacancy. So check this out. With the library board, for example, which meets quarterly, a person can miss a single meeting and be bounced off of the board. And that has happened before, right? So what's to say that in the future, this commission doesn't call this board to meet more than 4 times or more than 5 times, right? And it's on an ad hoc basis, so it's not like people have the opportunity to plan when they're going to come. And so a person misses a meeting, and all of a sudden they're bounced off the board. That, to me, doesn't make very much sense. In addition to that, I have a problem with shrinking the board. Now, if individual members of this body have heard from individual members of the board in private and not in public that they would prefer not to serve, then that's one thing, but I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that from my appointee. I haven't heard that from anyone. So I have a problem with the ad hoc basis of this board. They need a regular meeting time. If we want direction, there's no direction in this ordinance. If you say you want direction, there's none given to the board as to what they're going to focus on. It's whatever it is that we'll say they'll focus on whenever. That's not good enough. This thing needs to go away, and it needs to come back with a lot more detail, and it needs not to shrink the board, and it needs not to have the meeting at our whim or at the electric utility director's whim, but on a regular schedule. I think that's very important.
Commissioner Robinson?
I want to thank the people that have served on the board. There's a lot that we could work towards trying to amend tonight, but if we can postpone it and fix it to everybody's satisfaction, I appreciate the rush to decisions on this. I absolutely agree with Commissioner Amoroso on giving boards directions. We get into trouble more often than not about boards misunderstanding their purpose. So unless we want to make all the amendments that are agreeable to 3 of us, I'm okay with postponing it.
City Manager?
Back when we first started talking about the concept of changing the way we do business for the electric utility, we made significant changes in the competency levels of the staff, the way the organization was structured, and the resourcing. And over the last couple of years, the electric utility has seen a dramatic set of steps. I think you all agree to that. And part of that new direction, I was very clear in conversations with you about wanting to elevate you as the board of directors, which takes a lot of time. If you'll recall, we had a variety of items that would periodically show up on a regular commission meeting at the end. And the EUAB was meeting. A lot of times people wouldn't go to those meetings. I didn't necessarily see folks at that meeting a lot. And we felt that elevating this meeting that's specifically focused once a month on the electric utility at this level was the best and most efficient way to be transparent, to get the word out about things that are happening in the electric utility, and to increase your knowledge base, experience, and ability to perform as a board of directors on behalf of the public, the customers, the people that you serve. And that was a direction we were moving forward with some great excitement, because it was a tremendous change in the way we were becoming more professional. And I think a lot of the things that Ed in particular has brought to the table has been dramatic, and it's come to you directly. And it's not things necessarily that's involved the EUAB, honestly, and a lot of the operational things. And it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to churn the bureaucracies that we have. We do. To put this meeting on for you takes a lot of staff time, effort, and energy to do this once a month. And I know you don't necessarily appreciate that in the same way because you're not behind the scenes, but it isn't easy to put these meetings on this way. So adding now another level of complexity by keeping the EUAB process the way it was before every month, you've effectively doubled our processing of meeting times, efforts, and energy, and I have to have staff, into the night doing these kinds of meetings. Now, that's not to detract from the intent and what's been happening in the past and the love of city that the members of the board have. I don't think that that's an issue here. And yes, the optics are bad because nobody ever wants to do away with an advisory board or shrink its responsibility. It's just not something that comes intuitively to the average person. But somewhere between push-button democracy and making decisions on a business that is in the weeds, do not make a mistake. We have a lot of good things happening, but we sit on the edge of a knife in this organization I keep trying to remind y'all that. This is no exception. And these guys have a lot of responsibility and burdens on their shoulder. And if I can clear the path for them to get this to a healthy position where we can then back up and let off the gas pedal and start to be, we have the bandwidth to be more inclusive in those areas, that's a good thing. But we haven't done the triage in the electric utility like we've done across the other parts of this organization yet. We're about to embark on a huge set of investments to get our reliability indices where they need to be and to make us competitive in this marketplace and to explore progressive forms of energy and to brand this. That takes a lot of time, effort, and energy with limited staff. So I just want you to appreciate, we've now are doubling our bureaucratic process policy-wise because we're doing these meetings now, and we're going to be doing the UAB meetings. And the other things we're trying to do, we'd like to do a report to the shareholders, and those kinds of efforts take a lot of time, effort, and energy. Just please be conscious of that, because what staff is hearing is the opposite. And I just wanted to convey that to you, and that's where this came from. It didn't come out of a bad place. It came out at the bottom line. The customers and users of electric utility in this city, the owners, have an expectation that when they turn the switch, the light comes on, they can afford the bill. It's reliable and it's progressive. You know, in the long term is the brand that we're using electrons from good, carbon neutral sources. This is the crew that's going to give that to you. That's the big picture. And that's what we're motivated as staff. And that's why we're trying to make these changes for no nefarious reason.
Can you, I understand that and I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not trying to be a thorn in anybody's side here, but the Finance Advisory Board, we go through how many extra meetings every year to go through budget process, right? The Finance Advisory Board is still meeting about finances, and we still have our budget process. Yes, we are the chairman of the board or whatever. Couldn't Electric Utility Advisory Board go to, just throwing out there, a quarterly meeting where at least the agenda was packed and you could put a number of things on them once a quarter you meet, to at least have that extra sounding board to keep it as is but be quarterly, so that they could go through some of the items? I mean, couldn't they be up to date and updated on this ocean current energy projects to be able to voice that? They've not only been an advisory for us, they've been also a communication tool in the community to share the ideas in some of the projects. How many people who live here don't even know we have a solar plant, for crying out loud? You know what I mean? How many people
That's
don't
been
know?
talked about numerous times at the Electric Utility Advisory Board, so that I don't know if there's a direct correlation to getting things out to the public en masse, but changing the structure to quarterlies or going to an ad hoc basis would be preferable than a rigid every month.
Well, quarterly, I think, would be fine, because then you'd at least be able to throw them a bunch of different things at the meetings and have them there and still have their input and their review process, but it wouldn't be as tenuous on staff. And we'd also have our monthly meetings too on top of it. I don't know, just an idea. Commissioner Hardy?
Mr. City Manager, you said that keeping the EUAB would be an added level of complexity, given that we're having these monthly meetings for staff to have to deal with, right?
It's more work. Let's be frank.
It's
a lot more work.
Could I ask, which came last, these monthly meetings or the EUAB's existence?
EUAB's existence was obviously here first.
Okay, so the added level of complexity doesn't come from the EUAB remaining. The added level of complexity comes from us having these monthly meetings.
So if you're recommending we stop doing these, I'd be happy to do that.
I'm not recommending that. I'm just correcting the record. Look, I think this board has been important. Its members are dedicated. They have shown up here numerous times when their board is on the agenda. I don't think that its membership should be shrunken. I don't think that they should be made to meet ad hoc. Perhaps not a monthly meeting, maybe a bi-monthly meeting. I think quarterly, it gets to where it's almost out of mind for 3 months. I think this board has a role to serve, and if staff would like the commission to focus the board, then we should perhaps be presented with a resolution or an amendment to the existing ordinance that would define the areas of policy that this board would focus on going forward, or define the areas of decision making that this board will not focus on, right? But what we have here is not that. What we have here is a new ordinance that would create a new board with fewer members that would meet whenever staff or we decide that they meet. And, you know, here's another question. It says that the board will meet when called upon by the electric utility advisor or by the commission. How exactly would the commission go about calling for the board to meet? I think we've had issues in the past with our agenda processes. How exactly would that occur? That's unclear to me right now. And so as far as I see it, I'm not sure that we could get a meeting unless the electric utility director decides to have a meeting. I just think that it needs to be a board that meets regularly, not on a quarterly basis, perhaps not on a monthly basis. I think a good compromise is every second month. And I think that we need to give them, in the way of this ordinance, some areas to focus on or some areas to stay out of. I don't think this ordinance is the solution. I would ask the maker of the motion to withdraw his motion so that we can make a motion to either table this or amend this ordinance here, because this is, again, I can't support this.
Okay, Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
I think we've gotten a little bit off point here. The motion was to adopt the ordinance. And all I've heard, most of the conversation is centered around postponing. That's not the motion.
No.
Okay. I'm not inclined to withdraw the motion. I said earlier, and like I said, I don't like the situation that we're in, but I don't know that we're going to get to a better place by postponing it. I just don't think we're going to get to a better place. You know, I've spoken to, you know, a couple members of the board, and they're perfectly fine with this. Now, they're not happy necessarily about the way it happened, but they're perfectly fine with where they've come from, what they've contributed, where we are, and what they potentially can contribute in the future.
Where are they?
I beg your pardon?
Quiet, please, one at a time.
So, you know, I just, you know, I feel awful that I'm not going to postpone it, but on the other, I don't know what we benefit from this. You know, we beat things over and over and over again. You know, again, the motion was to adopt and so we've had 2 or 3, 4 bites at the apple here, and we just keep talking and talking and talking, and we talk ourselves out of stuff, and, you know, we're not very effective or very efficient when we do it that way.
Okay. Commissioner Robinson?
Other cities have a combined CRA board. How does that work? And so I would be interested in not having any more burden on staff to create 2 meetings. Why not invite 5 people to be part of our meeting when we have electric utility meetings and call it a day with 1 staff meeting once a month. And that way we will be including citizens. I'm Ryan and
I have cards
Peggy
here from the
and Lisa Maxwell all contributed as much as we're going to contribute to the electric utility board. We get our information on Friday. I don't think we've become experts in 2 days, 3 days. So I'm proposing bringing this back with the idea that 5-member UAB board become part of whatever you want to call it, a commission board, and have 1 meeting a month. And that eliminates 1 staff meeting and incorporates expertise outside of all the experts on the dais at the present.
I like that idea, Commissioner Robinson. Okay, we've
Should
got
we
some
workshop
cards.
this?
Are we past?
No,
I'm
not,
sorry.
not
I
for that
didn't-
reason, but
I
just
didn't time it. I apologize.
not because we're past a certain time, but just because
We
I
have
think
Ramsey
they're-
Stevens, Brian Oblender, and Richard Gercio.
I'll be really, really quick.
Wait, we need a microphone.
Yeah, there's a mic.
Prior to this discussion, I read this amendment, and as you know, I'm a big fan of the EUAB because it has been really constructive and is really necessary for all of you, let alone for all of us. So even if it had been ad hoc for the last year, it still would have been meeting regularly because you still needed it to go through the PPA process and to go through other things so that you then have the ability to vote on them with buy-in, right? So, that issue might be somewhat moot, but really important thing to consider. If you go to a 5-person board, Palm Springs will no longer be represented if each of you are going to get an appointee. And I think that's something to really take into consideration. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. Ryan?
Wasn't that hard. Ryan Alblander, 1702 North A Street, current member of the UAB board. Thank you for having this discussion, putting it on the agenda. A couple of points that I'm actually fine with the ordinance as it's written, because a lot of the times when something comes up, there's a timely fashion when you have to actually talk about it. If it's talked about 3 months later, you guys can't really be advised about it until 3 months later. So having ad hoc meetings, it kind of sucks, but sometimes it's necessary when some things comes up. So I'm not really speaking for myself, not any other board member. I'm okay with that part. Because like Ramsey Stevens just said, at least we'll be meeting and having discussions about advising this board. Secondly, I don't like the idea about the Joint Commission UAB board because of a thing I learned about last year called sunshine. If we ever want to talk to you about an item that's coming up for vote, we can never do that.
You can't talk to yourselves either.
We can't talk to ourselves either.
So there's no change.
Like the most recent PPA thing, that was kind of funny because we had all these code names and we couldn't really talk about what thing was what with whoever, like public, private, all this kind of thing. So sunshine adds a whole level of complexity to these meetings. So we can freely talk to you about things that are coming up for vote. That would be nice. So otherwise, I learned a lot being on the advisory board for the past year and a half. I think it should continue in some fashion, how it's up to you. But I also enjoy these meetings too, so I can come as a member of the public. And I can tell you that a lot more people are coming to these meetings than have ever come to a UAB board meeting. Like I would be on Facebook, and I was getting warned about this, not to actually talk too much about things on Facebook, guys, to keep track of everything. But I would see people naysaying the utilities. It's like, come to the UAB board meeting, air your whatever. And they're like, we shouldn't have to, we have commissioners that can vote for us, or something like that. I'm like, well, if you're not going to participate in government, then be quiet. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia?
Madam Mayor, Richard Garcia, 720 South Palm Way. 4 of us in this room were at the participated in the forum at the Playhouse. One of the questions at the NAPC forum was, the city manager has put the Electric Utility Advisory Board on hiatus. Now, this is ordinance number 2012-22, which created the Electric Utility Advisory Board. I carry it with me in my portfolio, along with that of the FAB and the resolution for the Bond Oversight Committee. And nowhere in here does it say that the city manager has the authority to do that. It says that the board and its members serve at the pleasure of the city commission. So that's one thing. What it also says here is that the board is to serve as a channel of communication between the city commission, utility department staff, and the citizens of the city as business owners of Lake Worth in order to understand and solve the many complex problems relating to water, sewer, and electric utilities. It's not just the electric utility board. If you read this ordinance, that's in here. You're taking away in the new board, in the new ordinance, the ability for the board itself to call a meeting. In here, it clearly states, the board shall meet at least once a month. The chair shall have the power to schedule special meetings or cancel regularly scheduled meetings as the workload of the board requires. Now, this is the only board that's used in an advisory capacity. The FAB is used forensically. You never came to us and asked us ahead of time what we wanted, what we thought about something you were about to do. It happens all the time here. You always say, has the Electric Utility Board been told about this, and what's their advice on this? This is the only board that's used that way, and I think that if you're not going to use it that way, you should just sunset the board. If you're going to do that, just get rid of it. I mean, what's the sense of stripping all their advisory capacity? And they have advised well, I've seen, over the last couple of years. They've done a very good job of it. So aside from how it was done and all of that and all the bad blood that may be or not be there, I think that you need to really look at what this was structured to do and what you're taking away from that. And I can understand that it creates workload and what have you. We have a quarterly meeting for the Bond Oversight Committee because that's a forensic board as well. It's only going over numbers that have been done. A quarterly meeting might be proper for this, but certainly consider.
Thank you. Well, I'm thinking that some of the conversation, and I know that you had said, but I think a quarterly meeting might be a good way to keep existing board and not tax staff too much and still be able to keep things intact from some way. How do you guys feel about that? I know, Commissioner Hardy, you said no, you were looking more at every other month, but do you guys think that's an option to what's currently on the, I know we've got a motion on the floor, but I'm just voicing my opinion. Vice Mayor?
Well, I agree with that, but I think we have a motion on the table, but I think then we need to bring something back to talk about direction, not only for this board, but all boards, but, you know, kind of set it up as quarterly. I don't know that it needs to be in the motion, because again, it might be changing depending on, you know, one thing, you know, I at first I liked the idea of having the board join us, but then the more I thought about it and sitting in on board meetings, quite often they're talking about something that, like you alluded to, that, you know, there's certain things that they can talk about, and you know, they're negotiating contracts, and you know, to have both of us in the room at the same time doesn't make sense if we're asking them to bring a recommendation back or do due diligence before it gets to us, because that might be something that they will be doing as we move forward. And with some of the things that will be coming up in front of us with the tidelines and things like that, there'll be some, you know, heavy conversation going on. So again, it might be quarterly, but there may be a need for other meetings, you know. So I don't know that we need to set something. I'd like to give direction. I'd like to start with something, but again, I think it could, you know.
The concern, well, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, things change up here daily. You know, we've seen it with the penny sales tax. We've seen it with, you know, things that we'd like the UAB to give input in on, but we had to make decisions, so we couldn't wait for another meeting. So, you know.
I just think that the whole way that this is written, without changing the attendance rules and all of that you brought up, whatever, you can't say, I'm gonna call you at our leisure, and you must show up at the last minute to attend this. And if you miss that one meeting, then you're off, because that's 25% of the meeting. You know, I think there needs to be designated times and places the second week of whatever month at a certain time or whatever. People need to plan their lives around there. And if you expect to have an attendance policy that's going to either help or get someone off the team, you have to give them some sort of parameter, not just show up. Oh, you couldn't make that one. Sorry, you're off the board. I mean, you can't. You have to address those things. I don't think the ordinance as written can be adopted, in my personal opinion. But I think that we could come back with another round of it, or we could revise it right here and right now, if you wanted to do that, Vice Mayor.
Well, just piggybacking on that, we've had this discussion before about, you know, people showing up, and it's always, and I'm going to say it wrong, but they've always worked at the leisure of, and we've had people that missed attendance, but we didn't necessarily throw them off. And we've had this discussion, and I think we need to, his hand's up over there, but I think we need to stop having this discussion and figure out what we're doing with it, because we've been having it for years.
Thank you.
But again, I have a problem leaving this board in limbo. If we're not going to do anything tonight, we need to send a clear directional letter to them thanking for their service, and that the commission is in hiatus and they are in hiatus, and right now we don't need them to move forward, but to have them move forward with no clear direction, no thank you, miscommunications, and to continue to meet with no clear direction, I'm concerned with that.
I agree. Vice Mayor Pro Tem? He's praying.
There is no clear path to cleaning up where we are right now, as far as the optics and the evolution of where we are. There is no clear path to do that. We cannot fix what's already been done. Okay? From a larger perspective and a greater context of everything we do at this dais, on all the issues we face in the city, sometimes I think we forget that we have a staff a city manager and a staff that are paid professionals that we have here because we want them to be here, because we want them to bring us the best possible options to consider. So unless this is not the best possible option that our administration can put together, why we have got to stop this. We have got to start relying a little bit more on staff in the terms of respecting their professional place and their recommendations. We cannot continue to micromanage everything that we do around here, everything that comes before this commission. That is not our job. We are supposed to govern from up here, not get down in the weeds. There's no clear, clean way to clean this up. So if it's staff's position that we have transitioned, that the days of 6 years ago when things were really ugly and people were getting the pitchforks and the torches out, those days are hopefully over, and we've transitioned. We've got a higher caliber of staff in our utility department. We have a clear direction, a focus on what we need to do because we have that higher caliber staff. And what staff, I think, is telling us is it's time to do something a little bit different. Okay, I don't like the idea that we're having this conversation. I'm heartbroken. Like I said, we owe 1,000 apologies for how we got here. But we just can't, I'm so distraught over the fact that we keep chewing these things up, chewing them 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 up. And what do we get at the end of the day? Except frustrated. Okay, so if it's going to make you, Madam Mayor, happy, if you don't think we're going to get anywhere with this tonight, I don't know how my seconder is, let's do something. But, I don't want to look like the bad guy here for just trying to.
I
does that
agree
make
with.
sense?
I agree with you, but you know what? When staff and when you do this and you put it, it wasn't on the agenda, then it was on the agenda, and you bring it forward like that, it's already been bad job. So, you're asking us to trust in you because of the professionalism, which you are, and you are superstars and you are rock stars in your own right, and I get it, and I don't want to tax you for time, but I also want to say, when you make a rookie mistake like doing that and making them look bad, then you come back and say, well, we want you to trust in our opinions. I get it. You earned our trust. You earn our trust every single day. But there's a level of transparency in the community that wants to be a part of this process of electric utility. I'm trying to step back and say the happy medium here is, can we leave it as is, back up, do it quarterly, so they're involved in the process and have an eyeball on it, and and not rock the boat. The easiest place to come is to come into the center, to say, we respect you, we want this board here still, we want your input, we will not tax staff's time by doing it every single week or having whatever, but they still get input. You know what? Shame on us. We need to be in charge of saying these are the most important projects to us in the electric utility after speaking with staff in our own meetings, and this is what we tax them to do. We need them to look at X, Y, and Z. That gives them that whole quarter to focus and do their homework on X, Y, and Z, and then come back the next time and we can find out how the progress went on those things. I think it's an interim step to find out, can we see how that works? That's all I had to say.
Madam Mayor, the thing that I didn't have time to finish before you.
I'm sorry.
Was at the end of the day, no matter whether it's this issue or any issue, we are charged with the responsibility of leading. This is a representative form of government.
Correct.
Not push-button democracy.
Yes.
Okay? Now, if you want to talk about compromise on this issue, if that's where we want to go, then I say we have no further discussion about this. Bring the board members together in a workshop with us, have a conversation, and get their input on what we're going to do moving forward. And let that be the last, step, if you will, in a process of deciding for the city which direction we're going to go. But I get the impression no matter what we do here, somebody's not going to be happy.
Well, that's always the way. It's that way on every issue.
And this is like I said, I'm just really frustrated that we have to be in this situation to begin with. The optics are bad, and you can't clean it up. We're trying to clean it up, and we're fighting or disagreeing amongst ourselves on how to clean it up.
No, hey, listen, you guys talk 16,000 times more than I do. So when I have something to say, I make it succinct and to the point. The easiest thing to do without having to ruin and take a whole board down is to say, let's just meet less time.
We're not looking to take the board down.
I'm saying, you're cutting the board from 7 to 5. You're making it, to call upon them or whatever. All right. I don't want to get into debate on that. All I'm saying to you is, the happy resolution after I squirt my face with
What was
Andy.
that?
It was this thing. I wanted to see that in a
I think we got it in slow motion.
I need a slow motion
Madam
super
Mayor.
play on that one.
I will tell you this, the way things are going, this motion is going to fail based on the conversation we're having here. I'll defer to Commissioner Amoroso, Vice Mayor Amoroso. What do you think we should do between you and I?
Okay, so if we take the mayor's recommendation and leave the board at 7 and go quarterly, you are aware that you have no board members at the moment. They've all expired, and they would have to be re-upped or reappointed in order to get you your 7 board members. And some may want to stay, some may not want to stay. So that would be the first process, is to reach out to the 7 board members to see if anybody's still interested. And then it would have to come back to whoever appointed them to be reappointed and or, put back out there for other board members if we were losing any of these 7.
So because they've come to a conclusion, is there a need or a want for 5 board members as opposed to 7 board members?
And
I think at this point, now that we're getting beyond this conversation, it needs to come back.
It has certainly been
okay,
longer than 30
sure,
minutes.
okay.
Well, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't
have a problem
but
with that.
before
you had a
we
problem
move
with
on, if it is indeed going to be tabled or come
what,
back,
don't even go there.
we need a clear message to be sent to the board members to say thank you for your service and exactly what we've decided.
Quiet in the chambers, one at a time. Everything after 9 o'clock never gets good.
I would be
I always said that everything after 9 o'clock goes downhill.
I would be concerned that we go any farther after tonight without a clear message to our board members that have served to say thank you and to share with them exactly where we're going, that it's been tabled, it's been tabled to a further date, whatever it is. I'd hate for them to sit out there again in limbo. Somebody alluded to it, that it's been months since they've met and they've had no communication. Want to make sure that there is a clear communication if this board decides to table it or to.
Commissioner Robinson, you've been so quiet. Go ahead there.
The staff spends its time now every month, once a month, right? For us to set policy, is that necessary? Because our job is just to set policy. And if you have an expenditure that has to be decided, that can be on a regular agenda. I honestly don't think that we need to meet once a month with staff to set policy. Quarterly, including 5 members of an advisory board would suit me fine. Staff's time is important, and once a month to find out all the problems and issues and solutions that they're coming up with isn't necessary, in my opinion. We have sort of lost our assignment of policy rather than the minutiae, not the minutiae, the detail of what they do. I'm done with the conversation tonight.
It's been sitting on his
Mr.
hands.
Liberty, would you like to chime in for a second?
Yes, I don't have a little light, and I've been listening to the discussion. To say the staff spends or gets ready for these once a month, that is grossly understating what we go through.
Right.
We have now 3 times per month when we can bring issues forward. What staff spends their time doing is working diligently to come up with solutions, determine what the cost is, what the price is, follow through on the RFPs, issue the RFPs, evaluate, and suggest awards. So we're constantly in a mode of getting ready and bringing things for approval. It's happening fast. The issue for us with an advisory board is the inherent then delay that is introduced in the process to take every one of those decisions, whether it's a small one or a big one, to go to the Electric Utility Advisory Board for an opinion, and the education process that it takes to do that, and then they get that answer, perhaps multiple meetings with redirects or multiple data requests, and then finally bring something back that is months beyond when it should have really been in front of this board for a final decision. So there are issues that are of day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month management of the utility's ongoing operations, things that we need to do that we can't defer to a policy board. Decision needs to be made. There are other issues which are matters of broad public policy. Some of them have come up in the past, maybe net metering, maybe ultimately where we go with respect to carbon neutrality, any number of other issues. But what we're doing now is we're micromanaging with multiple layers of organization. Not only does the staff have to get them through me before I'll bring them forward, but they have to get them to the respective assistant director. Then we come to the city manager. Then ultimately we bring it to the commission. We need to keep moving on matters of significant importance to running this utility. That's a separate discussion from the broad issue of major public policy discussions, like net metering, for example, or where we might go with utility deposits down the road, but big issues that really need to be ultimately decided not by an engineer solving an equation or an operator who needs to push a button now to get the plant to run, but a bigger policy discussion. Not everything. The problem that we have now is that everything is believed to be in the purview of the board, and you can't run the company that way.
Understood. Commissioner Hardy?
I don't disagree with that. I recognize that if staff has to go to the utility advisory board for small decisions, then that's not good. And if that delays the decision-making process for things that shouldn't take several months, then that's not good either. But this ordinance solves more than that problem. And that's the issue that I have. I think it would be better to have an ordinance that says that on an annual basis or on a biennial basis, the commission will decide what are the policy issues that the board is going to focus on. And then that the board meets and discusses those issues and not the minutia of running the electric utility. That would have been preferable to what we have here. So, I think that there are things that I want, that Madam Mayor, you want, that Commissioner Robinson wants, that if we want them, we can't vote to approve this. So I'll be voting nay.
Can call the question, is that how you?
Vice Mayor.
Second.
Are we good?
Well, if we're going to kick it around, if you're considering a hybrid of having 5 members join us as part of this decision-making policy board going forward, you can't do it with 5. You're going to have to do it with 6. And if you do it, and with that 6th person has to be somebody from Palm Springs, as indicated earlier, and because you can't have an even
I
number.
hate to tell you this, but they called the question.
We didn't take a vote on whether to call the question.
But we have to vote on it because it's a non-debatable
There's a
motion.
first and a second.
Non-debatable motion.
Yeah.
Right.
The first and the second.
It's a superseding
You've done,
motion.
you've done it before too. I'm sorry.
You got to
to
get
say.
2/3 of a vote to call the question.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
By the way, 2/3 is 3 out of 5 on this body.
No, it's 4 out of 5.
No, that's 4/5.
A motion, so the question was called and it was seconded. That's how we've done it before. All those in favor, state so
Excuse
by
me, I'm
saying-
sorry, I didn't get the second of that.
I was the second.
Okay, called the question by Robinson.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Now remember.
To call the question.
To call the question.
Right.
All those opposed?
Nay.
So we call the question.
Question's been called. So we've got a motion on the floor and a second to approve it as it is written. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay.
Motion fails.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, excuse me, just,
excuse me, second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Nay.
this is a separate issue. I just want to make sure it gets on the record before we adjourn.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that on the record, we recognize Jacksonville Electric Authority, JEA, for offering up a transformer for us, right? Making it possible for us to buy that transformer. So a shout out to them. We will give them a proper thank you. But I also want to
And we'll
point
do,
out that,
and we'll do it earlier in the meeting next time.
yes, but that's a great example of public power at its finest when another utility steps up and says, we will help you, Lake Worth, and making that transformer available to us. So
Yeah, we-
thank you to them.
We should actually put it in our newsletter. That would be a good story to tell in our newsletter also.
And we're walking away with no direction for our UF board.
The ordinance gives them plenty of direction.
Yes. We've got
What do you mean?
we've got a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
everybody's
It's
happy.
been
What
fun.
ordinance are we referring to?
Gotta come back.